After my wife, the CEO, died, our kids said, "We want the estate, the company, everything." My lawyer asked me to fight it. I said, "Give it all to them." Everyone thought I'd lost my mind. At the final hearing, I signed the papers. The kids smiled, until their lawyer turned pale when he read. The snow was falling the day they told me my children wanted to take everything. Not just some things, not just the house or the company shares or the investment portfolio Catherine had built over 23 years of 16-hour days and canceled family dinners. Everything. The entirety of what she'd left behind when her heart gave out at 51, still wearing her reading glasses, still holding a quarterly report, still, according to the paramedics, trying to finish one last email on her phone, even as the world went dark around her. I remember thinking how fitting that was, how Catherine, my lawyer, Marcus Webb, sat across from me, in my study, Catherine's study, really. Though I'd been using it since the funeral 3 weeks ago, because I couldn't stand the emptiness of the master bedroom. Marcus had the kind of face that looked expensive, even when he was trying to look sympathetic. Today, he wasn't trying very hard. "They're filing a contestation of the will," he said, sliding the papers across the mahogany desk Catherine had imported from Italy. All 3 of them. Joint petition. I didn't touch the documents. I could see my children's names on the letterhead. Alexandra, 28. Brandon, 26. Charlotte, 23. Lined up like signatures on a declaration of war. Outside, the snow kept falling, silent and steady, the way it falls in those moments when the world holds its breath before everything changes. "On what grounds?" I asked, though I already knew. I'd known since the reading of the will, when I watched their faces shift from grief to calculation in the space between heartbeats. "Undue influence." Marcus tapped the papers with one manicured finger. "They're arguing that Catherine was—" He paused, searching for the diplomatic word. "Not of sound mind when she made certain decisions regarding the estate division." I almost laughed. Catherine, who'd built Meridian Technologies from a 3-person startup in our garage to a company worth $847 million at last valuation. Catherine, whose mind worked like a supercomputer, even on 4 hours of sleep. Catherine, who never made a decision without analyzing it from 17 different angles. Not of sound mind. "They want control of Meridian," Marcus continued. "They want the properties, the estate here, the beach house, the apartment in Manhattan. They want the art collection, the investment accounts, the trust funds." He met my eyes. "David, they want you to have nothing." The radiator hissed in the corner. I could see the gardens through the window. Catherine's rose garden buried under 6 inches of fresh snow. She'd planted those roses the year we bought this house, back when Alexandra was learning to walk and the future felt like something we were building together, brick by careful brick. "What does the will actually say?" I asked. Even though I'd read it so many times, I could recite it in my sleep. Marcus pulled out another document. "The company shares 62% controlling interest go to you. The estate and all properties go to you. The liquid assets are split. 40% to you, 60% divided among the children. The stipulation is that you maintain control of Meridian for a minimum of 10 years, after which you can transfer ownership to the children if you choose. And if I die before the 10 years, then it goes to them. All of it." Marcus leaned forward. "David, this is a strong case for you. Catherine's will is ironclad. She worked with the best estate lawyers in the state. She had full mental capacity assessments done. She even recorded a video statement explaining her reasoning." I remembered that video. Catherine in her office, looking tired, but determined, explaining why she was structuring things this way. Explaining how she'd built Meridian not just with her ideas, but with my support, my sacrifices, my willingness to be the parent who showed up to school plays and parent-teacher conferences while she was closing deals in Singapore. explaining how our marriage had been a partnership even if only one of us had our name on the company letterhead. She knew they'd do this, I said quietly. Marcus nodded. The video suggests she anticipated a challenge. She wanted to protect what you'd built together. Built together. That was the phrase that always stuck in my throat. Because what had I built? Exactly. I'd been a graphic designer when we met, doing freelance work, making decent money. When Catherine's company started to take off, we'd made a choice. Someone needed to be home for the kids. Someone needed to manage the household, coordinate the staff, handle the 1,000 invisible tasks that keep a family running. Catherine was brilliant at business. I was better at making sure our children didn't grow up as strangers to us. Except they had anyway, hadn't they? They think I'm a gold digger, I said. They think I manipulated their mother. Marcus didn't deny it. Alexandra's petition includes statements suggesting you isolated Catherine from them, that you controlled access to her during her final years. The anger came then, hot and sudden. I didn't isolate her. She worked 90-hour weeks. She missed birthdays, anniversaries, graduations. I was the one who tried to build bridges. I was the one who begged her to come home for dinner, to take a weekend off, to remember she had a family. I know. Do you? I stood up, moving to the window. The snow was heavier now, turning the world white and pure and false. Do you know what it's like to love someone who's married to their ambition? To watch your children learn to stop asking when mom will be home? To become invisible in your own life? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, the hearing is in 6 weeks. We need to file a response. 6 weeks. Catherine had been dead for 21 days, and already we were here, in this place where grief turned to greed and family became a battlefield. I thought about Alexandra, who'd inherited Catherine's ruthlessness but none of her vision. About Brandon, who'd coasted through an MBA program on his mother's connections and now sat on Meridian's board despite understanding nothing about the technology we developed. About Charlotte, the youngest, who at least had the decency to look uncomfortable during the will reading, though not uncomfortable enough to refuse to sign the petition. They wanted everything. What are my chances? I asked. If we fight this? 90% in your favor. Maybe 95. Catherine's will is airtight, but litigation is expensive and ugly. It'll take years. It'll destroy what's left of your relationship with your children. Marcus paused. It'll make everything public. The company, the finances, your private life, all of it. I imagined the headlines, the whispers in boardrooms, the way Meridian's competitors would circle like sharks, sensing blood in the water. The way Catherine's legacy would become fodder for business school case studies about family succession disasters. There's another option, Marcus said carefully. I turned to face him. You could settle, give them what they want. Not all of it we'd negotiate, but enough to make this go away quietly. How much is enough? Probably 60% of everything. You'd keep the rest, plus some protected assets. You'd maintain a minority stake in Meridian, maybe a seat on the board. It's not what Catherine wanted, but it's not what Catherine wanted, I repeated. Marcus spread his hands. David, I'm trying to protect you here. This fight will consume years of your life. Is it worth it? I looked at the papers on the desk. My children's names, their lawyers' names, the legal jargon that translated to, we don't believe you earned this. We don't believe you deserve this. We don't believe our mother loved you enough to choose you over us. The old David, the one who'd spent 23 years making peace, smoothing conflicts, trying to hold a family together with both hands while Catherine built her empire that David would have compromised. Would have given them what they wanted just to avoid the fight. But that David had died with Catherine, I think. Had died holding her hand in the hospital while the monitors went flat and the nurses gently suggested I step outside, as if I were in the way even in that final moment. I want to see them, I said. Marcus blinked. Your children? Set up a meeting. Here. All 3 of them. before we file any response. David, I'd advise against that. Anything you say could be used. I don't care. I moved back to the desk, picked up the petition, read my children's accusations, undue influence, mental incapacity, improper control. I want to hear them say it to my face. Marcus studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded, gathering his papers. I'll arrange it, but please, don't do anything rash. Don't make any promises. After he left, I sat alone in Catherine's study, listening to the old house settle around me. The radiators ticked. The snow whispered against the windows. Somewhere in the east wing, I could hear Maria, our housekeeper, running the vacuum, maintaining the illusion of normalcy while everything collapsed. I thought about the last conversation I'd had with Catherine, not the one in the hospital, where she was already too far gone to speak. The real last conversation, 3 days before her heart attack, when she'd come home at midnight to find me still awake, reading in bed. You should sleep, she'd said, loosening her tie. I was waiting for you. She'd smiled, that tired smile I knew so well. You're always waiting for me. Catherine, we need to talk about succession planning. You can't keep avoiding this conversation. I'm not avoiding it. I've handled it. The kids expect a lot of things they haven't earned. She'd sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly, looking every one of her 51 years. David, I need you to promise me something. Anything. If something happens to me, don't let them destroy what we built. The company, yes, but more than that, don't let them rewrite our story. We were partners. You know that, even if no one else does. I'd promised. Of course I'd promised. Now, sitting in her study with her children's accusations still warm from the printer, I wondered if she'd known. If she'd seen this coming the way she saw everything else, the market shifts, the technological disruptions, the boardroom betrayals, if she'd left me not just a will, but a weapon. My phone buzzed. A text from Alexandra. Dad, we need to talk. This doesn't have to be ugly. I stared at the message. My oldest daughter, who'd called me Dad exactly twice in the past 5 years, both times when she wanted something, who'd looked at me during the funeral with eyes full of barely concealed contempt. I texted back, Marcus is arranging a meeting. We'll talk then. Her response came immediately. This isn't about the money. I didn't reply, because we both knew it was always about the money. In Catherine's world, the world my children had inherited, everything was about the money. The snow was still falling when I finally left the study. I walked through the house Catherine had bought, past the art she'd collected, through rooms filled with furniture she'd chosen from catalogs during the rare hours she wasn't working. I'd lived here for 15 years, but it had never felt like mine. Just like the company had never been mine, the success had never been mine. The life we'd built had never been quite mine. That was about to change. In the master bedroom, I opened Catherine's closet. Her clothes still hung there, smelling faintly of her perfume, her shoes lined up with military precision, her jewelry box on the dresser containing pieces worth more than my parents' house. But I wasn't looking for jewelry. At the back of the closet, behind the rack of designer suits, there was a safe. Catherine had shown it to me once, years ago. Had given me the combination, just in case. I'd never opened it, never needed to. Until now. My hands were steady as I spun the dial. Click, click, click. The safe door swung open. Inside there were documents, legal papers, flash drives, photographs, and on top of everything, an envelope with my name written in Catherine's precise handwriting. I pulled it out, held it to the light. David, it read, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and they're trying to take everything. Don't let them. Inside this safe is everything you need. Trust the plan. I love you. I'm sorry I never said it enough. My vision blurred. I blinked hard, refusing the tears. Because Catherine had known. She'd known exactly what would happen, and she'd prepared for it. I pulled out the first document, started reading, then the second, then the third. By the time I finished, the snow had stopped, and the winter sun was breaking through the clouds, cold and bright and unforgiving. I understood now. I understood everything, and I smiled. They arrived separately, which told me everything I needed to know about their unity. Alexandra came first, in her Tesla, her assistant trailing behind with a leather portfolio that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She'd dressed for battle Armani suit, her mother's pearl earrings, heels that clicked against the marble foyer like a countdown timer. She looked like Catherine, had her cheekbones and her ruthless eyes, but none of the warmth that Catherine kept hidden beneath all that ambition. "Dad." She air-kissed near my cheek, the way she'd kiss a business associate. Professional, distant, cold as the February wind, howling outside. "Alexandra," I gestured toward the living room. "The others aren't here yet. Brandon's always late. Charlotte's probably crying in her car." She said it with contempt, as if emotional honesty were a weakness. She'd learned that from Catherine, too. Though Catherine at least had the excuse of building something, Alexandra just wielded her mother's hardness like inherited wealth, unearned, unexamined, absolute. We waited in silence. She scrolled through her phone, responding to emails with sharp, efficient taps. I watched her and remembered the little girl who used to wait by the window for Catherine to come home, who'd fall asleep on the couch clutching a drawing she'd made for Mommy, who'd wake up disappointed when I carried her to bed because Catherine still wasn't home. When did that little girl learn to stop waiting? Brandon arrived 20 minutes later, driving the Porsche Catherine had bought him for his 25th birthday. He looked hungover, or maybe just permanently exhausted from the effort of pretending to be competent. He'd inherited Catherine's ambition without her intelligence, her confidence without her capability. A dangerous combination. David. Not Dad. Never Dad. Not since he'd turned 18 and decided we weren't really family. Just people who happened to live in the same house. Brandon. He flopped onto the sofa like he owned it. Maybe he thought he did now. Charlotte was last, 30 minutes late. Her eyes red. At least she'd been crying. At least grief still lived somewhere inside her, even if greed had moved in next door. "Daddy, I'm so sorry we're doing this like this." She hugged me, and for a moment, I let myself believe she meant it. But Mom would have wanted... "Don't." I stepped back. "Don't tell me what your mother would have wanted." She left a will. She was very clear about what she wanted. Charlotte flinched. Alexandra looked up from her phone, assessing. "That's why we're here," Alexandra said smoothly. "To discuss what Mom really wanted, versus what she was convinced to put in a legal document." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Convinced, manipulated, controlled. Marcus had wanted to be here for this meeting. I'd told him no. Some things needed to happen without lawyers present, without witnesses, without the safety net of legal protocol. "Shall we sit?" I gestured to the seating arrangement. I'd prepared them on one side, me on the other, like a negotiation, like a divorce. They settled in, a united front. My children, the people I'd raised, fed, taught to ride bikes and tie shoelaces and say please and thank you. Strangers wearing familiar faces. "I read your petition," I began. "Undue influence. Questionable mental capacity. It's quite an accusation." "It's not personal, Dad," Brandon said, which was exactly what people said when things were entirely personal. "We're just protecting Mom's legacy." Her legacy. I tasted the words. "Tell me, Brandon, what do you know about building a legacy?" His jaw tightened. "I work at Meridian. I sit on the board. You sit in meetings you don't understand and vote however Alexandra tells you to vote. That's not. It's exactly that. I turned to Alexandra. And you've been VP of Strategic Development for 3 years. Can you tell me what our flagship product actually does? She didn't miss a beat. We develop quantum computing applications for... Wrong. That's the old product line. We pivoted 18 months ago. Your mother made that decision. She sent a company-wide memo. You apparently didn't read it. Alexandra's perfect composure cracked, just slightly. The technical details aren't my responsibility. No, your responsibility is strategy. But you can't strategize for a company you don't understand. I looked at Charlotte. And you. You've worked at Meridian for exactly 6 months, in marketing, and you've called in sick 42 times. Charlotte's face went pale. How did you... I pay attention. I leaned forward. Your mother built Meridian from nothing. She worked 16-hour days for 20 years. She missed your birthdays, your graduations, your lives, not because she didn't love you, but because she was building something that would outlast her, something that would take care of all of us. By giving it all to you? Alexandra's voice was sharp. By cutting us out? She didn't cut you out. She left you millions. She left you trust funds that most people couldn't earn in 10 lifetimes. What she didn't do was hand you a company you haven't earned the right to run. We're her children. Brandon stood up, face flushed. We have every right. You have the right she gave you in her will, nothing more. This is exactly what we're talking about. Alexandra stood too, controlled where Brandon was angry. You've isolated yourself in this house, surrounded yourself with Mom's things, convinced yourself you deserve what she built. But the truth is, David, you were a house husband, a glorified nanny. You didn't build Meridian. You didn't earn any of this. The words should have hurt. A year ago, they would have destroyed me. Now they just made me tired. You're right, I said quietly. I didn't build Meridian. I built something else. What? Brandon laughed. What did you build? You. I met his eyes. I built you. I was there when you were sick, when you needed help with homework, when you broke your arm skateboarding and cried all the way to the hospital. I was there for every parent-teacher conference your mother missed, every school play, every soccer game. I built the life that allowed your mother to build her company. So you want a medal for basic parenting? Alexandra crossed her arms. You want us to be grateful that you did the bare minimum? No. I want you to understand that marriage is a partnership, that supporting someone's dream is also building something, that there are different kinds of work, different kinds of value. This is pointless. Alexandra grabbed her bag. Dad, we're not here to debate your contributions. We're here to tell you that we're moving forward with the petition. You can make this easy or hard, but either way, I'll make it easy. They stopped. All 3 of them, frozen mid-movement, like I'd paused a film. What? Charlotte's voice was small. I'll give you what you want. I stood, moved to the window. The gardens were still buried in snow, but I could see the first hints of ice melting along the southern wall. Spring coming. Eventually. Everything changing. You want the company? Take it. You want the houses, the assets, the art collection? It's yours. Silence, heavy and disbelieving. You're giving up? Brandon sounded almost disappointed, like he'd been preparing for a war and I'd just surrendered without firing a shot. I'm choosing peace. I turned to face them. Your mother's been gone for less than a month. I don't want to spend the next 5 years fighting with you in court. I don't want Meridian's value destroyed by public litigation. I don't want to stand up in front of strangers and explain why my own children think I'm a con artist. Alexandra was watching me carefully. What's the catch? No catch. We do this cleanly. Marcus will work with your lawyers to draft a settlement. I'll sign over controlling interest in Meridian, transfer the properties, liquidate the shared assets. You three split everything. And you get what? Alexandra pressed. Enough to live on. A small percentage. Maybe I keep this house, or maybe I don't. We'll negotiate the details. Charlotte was crying again. Daddy, you don't have to do this. Don't I? I looked at her. You signed the petition, Charlotte. You accused me of manipulating your mother. You stood with your siblings and declared war. So yes, I think I do have to do this. Because fighting you would mean there's something worth salvaging. Some relationship worth protecting. The cruelty of it landed. I watched Charlotte's face crumple, watched Brandon look away, watched Alexandra's mask slip just enough to show the uncertainty beneath. Is that what you think? Alexandra's voice was quieter now. That there's nothing worth salvaging? I think you made your choice when you filed that petition. I think you decided I was the enemy, and I'm too tired to convince you otherwise. I moved toward the door. Marcus will contact your lawyers tomorrow. We'll have this wrapped up before spring. Just like that, Brandon was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You're just giving up everything Mom left you? Everything your mother left us, I corrected. But you're right. I'm giving it up. Because holding on to things that bring only pain is just another way of destroying yourself. I left them there, sitting in Catherine's living room, surrounded by Catherine's furniture, probably already calculating how much each piece would sell for. I went back to the study and closed the door. My hands were shaking, not from fear or regret, but from the sheer force of will it took to walk away from that room without telling them everything, without throwing Catherine's secrets in their faces like grenades, without detonating the careful plan she'd left behind. But timing, Catherine always said, was everything. I pulled out my phone, texted Marcus, "Meeting done. Tell their lawyers I'm ready to settle. Full surrender." His response came in seconds. "Are you insane? Call me. Now." I didn't call. Instead, I opened Catherine's envelope again, read her words for the 10th time. Trust the plan. There was a knock on the door. I almost didn't answer, but then Charlotte's voice came through, small and broken. "Daddy, can we talk? Just us?" I opened the door. She stood there looking young and lost, makeup smeared from crying, nothing like the poised corporate princess she tried to be at Meridian. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Alexandra said we had to present a united front, that it would be better for everyone if we controlled the company together, and I didn't want to be left out. I didn't want them to think I was weak. "So you accused me of manipulating your mother instead?" She flinched. "I didn't write that part. That was Alexandra's lawyer. I just signed where they told me to sign." "That's worse, Charlotte. That's so much worse." "I know." Tears spilled over. "I know, and I'm sorry, and I don't want you to give everything up because of me. Please, let's fight this. You deserve—" "What do I deserve?" I asked gently. "After 23 years of marriage to a woman who loved her company more than she loved me? After raising 3 children who see me as an obstacle to their inheritance? Tell me, Charlotte, what exactly do I deserve? We don't all see you that way. Don't you?" I studied her face. "When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you came to visit when you didn't want something? When was the last time you treated me like a father instead of a stepping stone to your mother's fortune?" She had no answer. The silence stretched between us like years. "I love you," she finally said. "I know I don't show it. I know I'm terrible at this, but I do love you. I love you too." And I meant it, which made everything harder. But love doesn't erase what you did, and it doesn't change what happens next. What does happen next? I thought about the documents in the safe, the flash drives, The evidence Catherine had compiled like she was building a legal case against her own children because, in a way, she had been. "You get what you wanted," I said, "and then you learn to live with it." She left, finally, and I heard the three of them gathering in the foyer, heard their voices, muffled through doors and walls. Alexandra's sharp directions, Brandon's confused questions, Charlotte's muffled sobs. Then the front door opened and closed. Engines started. Gravel crunched under expensive tires. They were gone. I stood at the window and watched their taillights disappear down the long driveway. 3 separate cars heading 3 separate directions, their brief unity already fracturing now that they'd gotten what they came for. My phone rang. "Marcus, tell me you didn't actually agree to give them everything," he said without preamble. "I agreed to settle." "David, for God's sake." "Marcus, I need you to do exactly what I say. Can you do that?" A pause. "That depends on what you're asking." "I'm asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to contact their lawyers and tell them I want to settle quickly. Full asset transfer, minimal negotiation. You're making a massive mistake." "Maybe." I looked at the safe, still open, still full of Catherine's final gifts. "Or maybe I'm finally making the right choice." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm tired of fighting for scraps of respect from people who should have given it freely. It means I'm done trying to prove I deserved Catherine's love. It means I'm choosing peace." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, "There's something you're not telling me." "There are a lot of things I'm not telling you, but you'll understand. Eventually. When the time is right." I ended the call. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the snow gold and pink and orange. Beautiful. Temporary. Already melting. I pulled out the flash drive Catherine had left, turned it over in my hands. So small, so innocuous, so devastating. On it, according to her notes, was everything. Financial records, email chains, recorded phone calls, evidence of the children's incompetence, their manipulation, their plans to seize control of Meridian long before Catherine died, evidence of affairs, embezzlement, fraud, everything she'd discovered and documented in the last year of her life, everything she'd been too heartbroken to confront them with while she was alive. She'd left that burden to me. "Trust the plan," she'd written. I trusted it. Because Catherine's plans always worked, even the ones that broke your heart. Especially those. The settlement negotiations took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of lawyers and conference rooms, of documents passed back and forth like hostages, of my children's attorneys smelling blood in the water and circling closer. They'd expected a fight. They'd prepared for litigation that would span years, cost millions, destroy relationships that were already hanging by threads. Instead, I gave them everything they asked for. Well, almost everything. Marcus sat across from me in his downtown office, surrounded by contracts and addendums and legal documents that would reshape my entire life. He looked like a man watching someone walk off a cliff and being powerless to stop it. "They're asking for the Hamptons house now," he said, sliding another document across his desk, "even though it's not technically part of the estate. You and Catherine bought it jointly 15 years ago. Give it to them." "David, give it to them, Marcus." He threw his pen down.
"I can't watch you do this! I can't participate in your complete self-destruction!"
"Then don't think of it as self-destruction. Think of it as, I searched for the word. Liberation." "Liberation." He laughed, bitter and sharp. "You're giving away a fortune. You're handing control of a company worth nearly $1 billion to 3 people who can barely manage their own checking accounts. Alexandra will run it into the ground within 5 years. Brandon will embezzle what's left. Charlotte will just cry about it. Probably. And that doesn't bother you?" I thought about Catherine's flash drive, currently locked in a safety deposit box at a bank downtown. I thought about the documents I'd spent the last 3 weeks studying, memorizing, understanding in their full, terrible context. It bothers me, I said carefully, but not in the way you think. Marcus studied me. He'd been Catherine's lawyer for 12 years, had navigated her through 3 major acquisitions and countless smaller legal battles. He was brilliant at reading people, at sensing the currents beneath calm surfaces. "What are you planning?" he asked quietly. "I'm planning to sign whatever they put in front of me." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer you're getting." We stared at each other across the desk. Outside, the city moved through its rhythms, people rushing to meetings, closing deals, building empires on the bones of other people's failures. Catherine's world, the world that had consumed her until there was nothing left but work and ambition and the hollow pride of winning. "The final hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from now," Marcus said, finally. "Judge Morrison. He'll review the settlement terms, make sure everything is legal and voluntary. Once you sign in front of him, that's it. No appeals, no takebacks." "Good. David, please, at least tell me why. Give me something." I almost did. Almost told him about the flash drive, about Catherine's evidence, about the plan that was unfolding exactly as she'd designed it. But Marcus was Catherine's lawyer, bound by her confidentiality even after death, and some secrets needed to stay buried a little longer. "I'm doing this because I'm tired," I said, which was true, even if it wasn't the whole truth. "I'm tired of fighting for scraps of respect. I'm tired of proving I deserve to be Catherine's husband. I'm tired of watching my children look at me like I'm a thief who stole their mother's fortune." "So, you're just going to hand them the fortune and, what, walk away? Live on whatever pittance they're gracious enough to leave you?" "Something like that." Marcus shook his head. "Catherine would be devastated." "Catherine left very specific instructions in her will. Our children are choosing to ignore those instructions. They're choosing to believe their mother wasn't competent to make her own decisions." I stood, gathering my coat. "I'm simply choosing not to fight a battle that's already lost." "No battle is lost until you surrender." "Maybe I'm surrendering to the right thing." I left him there, surrounded by papers that represented the dissolution of everything Catherine and I had built, or everything people thought we'd built. The truth was more complicated, as truth usually is. The truth was that Catherine and I had been building something else entirely all those years. Something that had nothing to do with money, or companies, or real estate portfolios. We'd been building a test. And our children were failing it spectacularly. I went to Meridian that afternoon. I hadn't been to the office since Catherine's funeral, had avoided the building where she'd spent more hours than she'd spent at home, but I needed to see it one more time before I signed it all away. Needed to walk through the halls she'd walked, sit in the office where she'd made decisions that changed industries, touch the desk where she'd worked herself to death. The security guard looked surprised to see me. "Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you, Robert. Will you be coming back regularly now? Taking over Mrs. Chen's office?" "Not anymore," I thought. "Not ever. Just visiting today," I said. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than I remembered. Or maybe I was just noticing it more now, aware that this might be my last time making this journey. The doors opened onto executive row plush carpets. Glass walls, the kind of studied luxury that was meant to intimidate visitors and reassure investors. Catherine's office was at the end. The door was closed but not locked. I pushed it open. Nothing had been touched. Her coffee cup still sat on the desk, lipstick mark fading on the rim, papers scattered across her workspace, mid-thought, mid-sentence, mid-life. Her reading glasses folded next to the keyboard. The photo of us on our wedding day, relegated to the corner of her desk like an afterthought. I sat in her chair, looked out at the view she'd looked at every day, the city sprawling below, full of competitors and opportunities and threats. She'd loved this view, had told me once that sitting here made her feel like she could conquer anything. I wondered if she'd felt that way at the end. If she'd looked out at this view as her heart began to fail and thought about conquest. Or if she'd thought about the family she'd sacrificed for this office, this view, this empire. Mr. Chen? I turned. Alexandra stood in the doorway, looking uncertain for the first time since this whole nightmare began. I didn't know you'd be here, she said, just saying goodbye. She stepped into the office, maintaining careful distance, like I might be contagious. Marcus said the settlement is almost done. Yes. And you're really going through with it. Did you think I wouldn't? She moved to the window, stood where I imagined Catherine had stood 1,000 times. Honestly, I thought you'd fight. I thought you'd drag this out, make us prove everything in court. That's what Mom would have done. I'm not your mother. No. She touched the glass, leaving fingerprints. You're not. We stood in silence. Two people who'd lived in the same house for 28 years and barely knew each other. Can I ask you something? Alexandra said finally. And will you give me an honest answer? I've never lied to you. Did you love her? My mother. Did you actually love her? Or was it always about the money? The question should have angered me, should have cut deep. Instead, I just felt sad. I loved her, I said quietly. I loved her when she was a graduate student with $300 in her bank account and dreams bigger than the sky. I loved her when she was building Meridian in our garage while pregnant with you. I loved her when she chose board meetings over your birthday parties and business trips over our anniversaries. I loved her when she came home at midnight, exhausted and brilliant, and already thinking about tomorrow's problems. Then why give up everything she left you? Because holding on to it means holding on to a fight with you and your siblings and the ghost of what we could have been as a family. I met her eyes. Because your mother left me a fortune. But what I really wanted, she couldn't leave. What I wanted was you. All three of you. A relationship that wasn't built on resentment and suspicion. Alexandra looked away. We were never close. No, because your mother was never home, and you learned to resent me for being there. You learned to see my presence as her absence. You learned that success meant sacrifice, and what she sacrificed was us. That's not fair. It's absolutely fair. I stood, moved toward the door. Your mother built something extraordinary, but she built it at a cost. And now you want the extraordinary thing, but you don't want to pay the cost. You don't want to admit that someone else made it possible. You're talking about yourself. I'm talking about partnership, about the invisible work that supports visible success, about the fact that your mother couldn't have built this company without someone managing everything she didn't have time for, including you. Alexandra's jaw tightened. So we should be grateful? We should thank you for doing basic parenting while Mom did the real work? There it was again, that phrase, the real work, as if raising children, managing a household, supporting a spouse's dreams was somehow less real than closing business deals. I don't want your gratitude, I said. I just wanted you to see me, to recognize that marriage is a partnership, and partnerships have different roles, but you can't see that. You can only see what you learn from your mother, that work is worth, and worth is measured in dollars. This is pointless. She crossed her arms, defensive. You've already agreed to the settlement. Why are we having this conversation? Because I keep hoping one of you will surprise me, will show me that Catherine and I did something right, raised someone who understands that people are more valuable than portfolios. I paused at the door. But you won't, because we didn't. We raised 3 strangers who wear our DNA like expensive clothes. I left her standing in Catherine's office, surrounded by her mother's things, probably already planning how to redecorate once the space was officially hers. The drive home took me past the places that marked the years. The park, where I'd pushed all 3 children on swings, while Catherine was in Tokyo. The school where I'd attended every parent-teacher conference alone. The restaurant where Catherine and I had celebrated our 10th anniversary, one of the few nights she'd actually made time for us. I remembered that night clearly. She'd been distracted, checking her phone between courses, finally excusing herself to take a call that couldn't wait. I'd sat alone at the table for 20 minutes, watching other couples talk and laugh and exist in the same moment together. When she came back, she was energized, electric with excitement. "I'm sorry," she'd said, not sounding sorry at all. "But David, we just closed the Apex deal. 30 million in new contracts. This changes everything. Happy anniversary," I'd said quietly. She'd paused then, really looked at me for the first time all night. "You're upset." "I'm tired." "Of what?" "Of competing with your company for your attention. Of knowing I'll always lose." She'd reached across the table, taken my hand. "You're not competing. You're what makes it possible for me to compete with everyone else." "That's not the same as being chosen." "But you are chosen. Every day, I choose to come home to you. I choose to build this life with you. You choose to sleep in the same house as me. That's not the same thing." We'd fought that night. One of our rare arguments. Catherine didn't like conflict at home. She got enough of it at work. But that night, something in me had broken open. "What do you want from me?" she demanded. "I'm building something incredible. I'm creating wealth and opportunities and jobs. I'm making a difference. I want you to make time for me, for our children, for the life we're supposed to be living together. This is our life. This is what we signed up for." "No, you signed up for this. I signed up for a partnership." She'd gone quiet then, and for a moment I thought I'd reached her, thought she might see what we were losing in pursuit of what she was building. "I can't be someone I'm not," she'd said finally. "I can't stop driving toward the next goal, the next victory. It's who I am." "I know, and I love who you are. I just wish who you are included more room for who we are." The memory hurt, even now, maybe especially now, because Catherine had never changed, had never made more room, had worked herself literally to death, leaving behind a fortune and 3 children who'd learned all her worst lessons and none of her best ones. But she'd also left something else. A plan, a test, a final lesson. And I was going to see it through. That night, I pulled out the flash drive again, plugged it into my laptop, watched the files populate across the screen. Audio recordings. Catherine's voice, clear and controlled, recording notes to herself like she was building a case file. March 15th. Alexandra called today. Didn't ask about me, about the business, about anything real. Just wanted to know if I'd approved her promotion to SVP. When I said she needed to earn it, she accused me of favoritism toward outside hires. She can't see that her resume is thin, her experience limited, her understanding of our technology superficial at best. She sees my standards as rejection. She always has. Another file, dated 2 months later. Brandon's financial records are concerning. He's spending beyond his means again, despite the trust fund. I suspect gambling, though he denies it. When I suggested he see a financial advisor, he became defensive, accused me of treating him like a child. But he is a child. All my children are still children, even in their 20s, because I never taught them to be anything else. I was too busy building this company to build them. The guilt in her voice was palpable. I'd never heard Catherine sound guilty before. She'd always been so certain, so sure of her choices. Charlotte is the one who worries me most. She's so desperate for approval, so willing to follow wherever Alexandra leads. She has no spine of her own. I see myself in her sometimes, the parts of me I've worked my whole life to overcome. The weakness, the need to please. I thought I was showing her how to be strong, how to be independent. Instead, I just taught her that her mother was never there. I listened to hours of recordings. Catherine, alone in her office, late at night, documenting her children's failures, her own failures, the slow unraveling of a family. And then, the final recording, dated 3 days before she died. David, if you're listening to this, then I'm gone. And they've done exactly what I knew they'd do. They've challenged the will. They've accused you of manipulation. They've proven that they learned nothing from me, except how to be greedy and ruthless without being competent. Her voice was tired. So tired. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I left this burden for you. I'm sorry I built this empire and forgot to build a family. I'm sorry I chose board meetings over bedtime stories and acquisitions over anniversaries. I'm sorry I made you invisible in your own life. I heard her take a breath, steadying herself. But I'm not sorry for the plan. You'll be tempted to fight them in court. Don't. Give them everything. Let them think they've won. Let them take control of Meridian, the properties, all of it. And then you'll understand why I documented everything. Why I recorded every conversation, every financial mistake, every incompetent decision. Another pause. They need to fail, David. They need to fail spectacularly, publicly, completely. And then, when they're drowning in their own arrogance and incompetence, when Meridian is on the brink of collapse, and their greed has destroyed everything I built, then you show them these files. Then you give them the choice I never gave them. Learn or lose everything that matters. Her voice cracked, just slightly. I love you. I know I never said it enough. I know I chose work over you 1,000 times. But you were always my partner. The only real partner I ever had. And this last thing, this final plan, I need you to be my partner one more time. I need you to trust me. Even if it hurts. Even if it costs you everything in the short term. The recording ended. I sat in the darkness of Catherine's study, listening to the silence after her voice, and understood. She wasn't protecting me with that will. She was protecting them. She was giving them one last chance to learn what she'd never been able to teach them. That wealth without wisdom is just another form of poverty. That power without competence is destruction. That inheritance without earning is a curse disguised as a gift. And I was going to help her teach them, even if they hated me for it. Even if it cost me everything. Because that's what partners do. The courthouse smelled like old paper and broken promises. I'd been here once before, 24 years ago, standing in a different room on a different floor, saying vows to Catherine while a justice of the peace droned through the legal requirements of marriage. We'd been young then, or young enough to believe that love could survive anything. That partnership meant sharing everything equally. Dreams, sacrifices, victories. We'd been wrong, of course. Or maybe we'd been right, and life had simply been more complicated than our vows. Now I was back, in a courtroom that smelled the same, felt the same, meant something entirely different. Here to end what we'd built. Here to sign away everything Catherine had left me. Here to play my part in her final performance. Marcus sat beside me at the defendant's table, though there was no defendant, not really, just parties to a settlement. He'd barely spoken to me in the car ride over, had spent the whole drive reviewing documents with the grim determination of a surgeon preparing for an amputation he knew was unnecessary. Last chance, he'd said in the parking garage. We can walk in there and tell the judge you've changed your mind. Settlements aren't binding until you sign. I'm not changing my mind. David, you're about to give away $380 million in assets. You're surrendering control of a company worth 3 times that. You're keeping less than 8% of what Catherine left you. I know the numbers, Marcus. Do you know what it means? You'll have maybe $30 million after taxes. That sounds like a lot, but it's not. Not compared to what you're losing. Not compared to what they're gaining. I'd looked at him then. Really looked at him. Marcus, do you remember what Catherine used to say about negotiation? She said a lot of things about negotiation. She said the person who appears to lose often wins in ways the other side never sees coming. He'd studied my face, searching for meaning. What does that mean? It means trust me. One more time. trust me the way Catherine trusted me. And he had, because loyalty outlasts understanding sometimes. Now we sat in the courtroom, waiting. Alexandra, Brandon, and Charlotte sat across the aisle with their legal team, 3 lawyers, each more expensive than the last, each wearing the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you've already won. Alexandra looked like Catherine, sitting straight-backed and certain, already mentally redecorating Meridian's executive offices. Brandon kept checking his phone, probably calculating how quickly he could liquidate assets. Charlotte wouldn't meet my eyes, which meant some part of her still felt guilty. Good. Guilt meant conscience. Conscience meant hope. Judge Morrison entered an older woman with silver hair and the kind of face that had seen every variation of human greed and weakness. She settled into her chair, adjusted her glasses, looked over the settlement documents that had been filed. "This is the matter of Chen versus Chen," she began, her voice carrying the weight of routine, or rather, what was supposed to be Chen versus Chen, before the parties reached a settlement agreement. She looked at me over her glasses. "Mr. Chen, I've reviewed the proposed settlement terms. I need to ask you directly, do you understand what you're agreeing to?" "Yes, Your Honor." "You're surrendering controlling interest in Meridian Technologies, a company currently valued at approximately $847 million. You're transferring ownership of 4 residential properties, including the primary marital residence. You're liquidating joint investment accounts totaling approximately $120 million and taking only a 15% share. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mr. Chen, this court has an obligation to ensure you're not signing under duress or without full understanding of the consequences. This settlement represents a substantial reduction from what you were entitled to under your late wife's will." "I understand, Your Honor. I'm signing voluntarily." Judge Morrison turned to Alexandra's lead attorney. "And the petitioners are withdrawing all claims of undue influence and questions of competency regarding the deceased's will?" "Yes, Your Honor," the attorney said smoothly. "In light of Mr. Chen's generous agreement to settle, my clients feel it's unnecessary to pursue litigation." Generous, as if I were giving them a gift rather than surrendering to their accusations. Judge Morrison looked skeptical. She'd probably seen 1,000 cases like this, families tearing each other apart over money, children challenging parents, spouses fighting over estates. She'd seen the worst of what grief and greed could produce. "Miss Chen," she said, addressing Alexandra, "you and your siblings accused your father of manipulating your mother, of exercising undue influence over a woman by all accounts of sound mind and exceptional business acumen. Those are serious allegations. Now you're withdrawing them because he's agreed to give you most of what she left him. Doesn't that strike you as—" She paused, searching for the diplomatic word. "Convenient?" She finished. "When there would do have Lee, doing way. Wonder would do me. Wonder would do. Wonder way." Alexandra's composure never wavered. She'd learned that from Catherine, too. "Your Honor, the settlement reflects a compromise that honors both our mother's memory and our family's desire to avoid prolonged litigation. We're not withdrawing our concerns. We're simply choosing resolution over conflict." "Not withdrawing your concerns," Judge Morrison repeated. "So you still believe your father manipulated your mother? You're just willing to overlook it if he pays you enough?" The courtroom went very quiet. Alexandra's lawyer stood quickly. "Your Honor, I don't think that's a fair characterization." "Sit down, counsel." Judge Morrison's voice was sharp. "I'm not here to approve a settlement just because both parties showed up with signatures. I'm here to ensure justice is served and that no party is being coerced or taken advantage of." She turned back to me. "Mr. Chen, your wife's will was clear. She wanted you to maintain control of her company. She wanted you to have the majority of assets. She had her will drafted by top attorneys, had psychological evaluations done, even recorded a video statement explaining her reasoning. Why would you surrender what she so clearly wanted you to have?" This was the moment. The moment where I could tell the truth, could explain Catherine's plan, could reveal the flash drive and the recordings and all the evidence she'd compiled. But it wasn't time. Not yet. Your Honor, I said carefully, my wife built something extraordinary. She poured her life into Meridian Technologies. Our children grew up in the shadow of that company, made sacrifices for it, whether they realized it or not. They feel entitled to it, and perhaps they are. Perhaps Catherine's will reflected her guilt as much as her wishes. That's not what the video statement suggests. I know, but Catherine is gone, and I'm still here, and so are our children. I have to live with whatever decision I make today. They have to live with it too. I glanced at Alexandra, Brandon, Charlotte. Fighting them in court would mean years of legal battles, public scrutiny, and the potential destruction of everything Catherine built. Settling means peace. It means the company survives. It means our family survives, in whatever form that takes. Even if it means you lose everything? I'm not losing everything, Your Honor. I'm keeping what matters, which is my dignity, my integrity, my choice. I paused. Catherine spent 23 years choosing her company over our family. I'm choosing differently. Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those sharp eyes that had probably seen through 1,000 lies. I wondered if she could see through mine the lie of omission, the truth I was holding back, the plan still unfolding. Very well, she said finally. If you're certain this is what you want, Mr. Chen, I'll approve the settlement. But I want it on record that this court finds the original will to be sound and the allegations of undue influence to be without merit. Your late wife knew exactly what she was doing when she structured her estate the way she did. Alexandra's lawyer started to object, but Judge Morrison cut him off with a look. I'm approving this settlement against my better judgment, she continued, because Mr. Chen is a grown man capable of making his own choices, even choices I personally find questionable. But let the record show that, in my opinion, Mrs. Catherine Chen's will was a masterwork of estate planning, and this settlement represents a significant deviation from her clearly stated wishes. She looked at my children. You three are getting a gift you didn't earn and frankly don't deserve. I hope you have the wisdom to appreciate it, but I doubt you will. Brandon flushed red. Charlotte looked at her hands. Alexandra's expression never changed. The settlement is approved, Judge Morrison said. Mr. Chen, please approach to sign the final documents. I stood, walked to the clerk's desk, picked up the pen they'd provided, cheap ballpoint. Nothing ceremonial about it. This wasn't a wedding or a graduation or any kind of celebration. This was an ending. The first document transferred controlling interest in Meridian Technologies. I signed David Chen. The second document transferred the primary residence. I signed. The third document liquidated joint accounts. I signed. Page after page, signature after signature, giving away everything Catherine and I had built together, everything she'd left me, everything that represented 23 years of partnership. Marcus stood beside me, watching each signature like he was watching me bleed out. You don't have to do this, he whispered when we were on the 8th document. We can still stop this. No, I said quietly. We can't. Because Catherine's plan required this. Required me to surrender completely, to let them win so thoroughly that they'd never suspect what was coming. Required me to play the defeated spouse, the grieving widower who just wanted peace. I signed the last document, dated it, pushed the stack across to the clerk. It's done, the clerk said, gathering the papers like they were death certificates, which, in a way, they were. Judge Morrison nodded. The settlement is now binding. All assets will be transferred according to the terms within 30 days. Mr. Chen retains 8% of Meridian Technologies stock, the amount specified in the settlement, plus liquid assets totaling approximately $32 million after taxes. She looked at my children. The rest goes to you, divided according to the terms you agreed upon. Alexandra stood, smoothing her skirt. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me. I think you just made a terrible mistake. But that's for you to discover. Judge Morrison gathered her papers. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. That sound, striking wood, felt like a door closing, like the end of something, like Catherine dying all over again. We filed out of the courtroom in silence. In the hallway, Alexandra's lawyers were already congratulating each other, talking about filing fees and settlement percentages. The business of family destruction, all very professional. Charlotte approached me first, her eyes still not meeting mine. Daddy, don't, I said gently. You got what you wanted. Let's leave it at that. But I want you to know I'm sorry. For the petition, for the accusations, for all of it. I know you are. That's why this hurts. She started crying again, and Brandon awkwardly put an arm around her shoulders. He looked at me over her head, something like shame in his eyes. For what it's worth, he said, I hope you'll still come to family dinners, holidays. You're still our father. Am I? I asked. Because fathers are supposed to be respected, trusted, believed. You accused me of manipulating your mother. You dragged me into court. You forced me to prove I deserved to be her husband. We were just, Brandon started, protecting your inheritance. I know. Catherine would be so proud. The sarcasm landed like a slap. Brandon's face went red. Alexandra appeared, always in control, always managing the situation. Dad, let's not end this badly. We can still be a family. Can we? What does family mean to you, Alexandra? It means blood. It means loyalty. You've demonstrated neither. Her mask slipped, just for a second. Behind it, I saw something that might have been hurt, might have been anger, might have been the little girl who used to wait by the window for her mother to come home. We did what we had to do, she said coldly. Don't pretend you wouldn't have done the same. I wouldn't have. That's the difference between us. That's what your mother never taught you. I looked at all three of them, my children, these strangers. Winning isn't everything. Sometimes how you win matters more than whether you win at all. Easy to say when you're walking away with $32 million, Brandon muttered. You think this is about money? Isn't everything? And there it was. The lesson they'd learned from watching Catherine. The poison that had seeped into their understanding of the world. Everything is about money. Worth is measured in dollars. Value is calculated in assets. No, I said quietly. Not everything. But you'll learn that eventually. What's that supposed to mean? Alexandra's eyes narrowed. It means I hope you enjoy what you've won. I hope Meridian brings you everything you think it will. I hope the houses and the art and the investments make you happy. You're being cryptic. I'm being honest. Maybe for the first time in weeks. I walked away before they could respond. Marcus fell into step beside me. That was brutal, he said. It needed to be. And now? Now we wait. For what? I thought about the flash drive, locked safely away. I thought about the board meeting scheduled for 2 weeks from now, when Alexandra would officially take control of Meridian. I thought about the financial audits that would be triggered, the background checks that were standard procedure for new executives, the scrutiny that came with power. I thought about Catherine's voice on those recordings, documenting every mistake, every lie, every incompetent decision. For them to realize what they've inherited, I said. We pushed through the courthouse doors into cold March air. The sky was gray, threatening more snow. Winter refusing to release its grip even though spring was supposed to be coming. Marcus stopped on the courthouse steps. David, I've been your lawyer through all of this. And I still don't understand what you're doing. I don't understand why you gave them everything. I don't understand what you're planning, but I'm starting to think maybe I don't want to understand. Why? Because whatever you and Catherine cooked up, it's going to be devastating. I can feel it, and I'm not sure I want to be complicit in... In what? Justice? Truth? The consequences of their own actions? In revenge. I looked at him. Catherine didn't leave me weapons for revenge, Marcus. She left me weapons for teaching. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Revenge is about punishment. Teaching is about growth. Catherine wanted them to learn, even if the lesson hurts. Some lessons destroy people. Some people need destroying before they can be rebuilt. Marcus shook his head. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I. He left, and I stood alone on the courthouse steps, watching the city move around me. People rushing to appointments, to meetings, to lives that continued regardless of whose world had just ended inside those walls. My phone buzzed. A text from Alexandra. Transfer paperwork will be finalized by end of month. We'll need you to vacate the primary residence within 60 days. 60 days to pack up, 23 years of life. 60 days to say goodbye to the house where I'd raised 3 children who now saw me as an obstacle to remove. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked to my car, the 10-year-old Volvo I'd driven since Catherine bought it, practical and reliable and invisible, like me, and drove to the bank downtown. The safety deposit box was where I'd left it. Inside, Catherine's flash drive, her recorded instructions, her evidence. I held it in my hand, this tiny piece of technology that contained so much truth, so much pain, so much power. Not yet, I whispered. To Catherine, to the empty vault, to myself. But soon. I locked it away again, drove home through traffic that didn't care about my loss, and waited for the next chapter of Catherine's plan to unfold. Because it would. She designed it that way. Every piece in place. Every move calculated. Every consequence earned. Spring came slowly that year, like it was reluctant to arrive. I watched it from the windows of the house that was no longer mine. Watched the snow melt in patches, revealing Catherine's gardens beneath. The roses she'd planted 15 years ago were still dormant, waiting for warmth that seemed reluctant to come. Everything waiting. Everything holding its breath. The children moved fast once the papers were signed. Alexandra called the first board meeting for 10 days after the settlement. Sent me a formal invitation, as if I were a stranger. A minor shareholder who needed to be notified but not consulted. The email was professionally cold. You are invited to attend Meridian Technologies board meeting, March 25th, 10 a.m. Your presence is optional, but encouraged. Optional. My presence in the company Catherine and I had built was now optional. I didn't respond, just marked it on my calendar and waited. Brandon showed up at the house 3 days after the settlement, driving a new Ferrari Red, ostentatious, the kind of car people buy when they want everyone to know they have money but no taste. He brought movers. We're cataloging the art collection, he announced, walking past me like I was staff. Alexandra wants it properly appraised before we decide what to keep and what to auction. I watched from the doorway of Catherine's study as strangers moved through our home, tagging paintings and sculptures with little numbered stickers. That piece Catherine had bought in Paris on our 10th anniversary tagged. The sculpture she'd commissioned from a local artist tagged. The photographs of our family, rare moments when Catherine had actually been present tagged. Everything reduced to inventory. Everything assigned a value. Are you going to auction the family photos too? I asked Brandon. He looked up from his tablet, where he was recording items. Don't be dramatic, Dad. We're just being thorough. Thorough. Is that what we're calling it? Look, you agreed to this. You signed the papers. Don't act like you're some victim here. I'm not acting like anything. I'm observing what you're doing with what you've inherited. We're managing assets. That's what responsible people do. Responsible. Brandon, who'd blown through 3 trust funds before age 30, who'd been cut off by Catherine twice for gambling debts,
who'd never held a job he hadn't been given by family connections. He was lecturing me about responsibility.
I almost laughed, almost told him about the flash drive, about the recordings where Catherine documented every one of his financial disasters, every lie he'd told to cover his mistakes. Instead, I just said, "Your mother would be so proud." He flushed. "Don't talk about Mom. You don't get to talk about what she'd want." Why? Because I only spent 23 years married to her? Because I only supported every decision she made? Raised her children while she built her empire? Held her hand while she died? Because you gave up, Brandon shouted. And suddenly, he was the one who looked like he might cry. You gave up everything she left you without even fighting. What kind of person does that? What kind of father just surrenders? The question hung in the air between us. The kind who knows when a fight can't be won, I said quietly. The kind who values peace over victory. That's just weakness dressed up as wisdom. Maybe. Or maybe it's wisdom you're not old enough to recognize yet. He left without responding, the movers trailing after him with their tablets and their price tags and their careful inventory of everything Catherine and I had collected over 2 decades. Charlotte came next, 2 days later, looking guilty and determined in equal measure. "Daddy, I need the keys to the beach house," she said, standing in the foyer like a visitor. The beach house. Alexandra wants to put it on the market. The real estate agent needs access. I thought about that house. The summers we'd spent there when the children were young, back when Catherine could occasionally be convinced to take a long weekend, the memories, embedded in those walls, sandcastles, and sunburns, and rare moments when we'd felt like an actual family. You're selling it. The market's good right now. Alexandra says we should capitalize. Alexandra says, I studied my youngest daughter. Do you ever have opinions of your own, Charlotte? Or do you just echo whatever your sister tells you? Her face crumpled. That's not fair. Isn't it? You signed a petition accusing me of manipulating your mother. Did you believe that? Or did Alexandra tell you to sign? She stopped, started again. I don't know what I believed. I was confused. Grieving. Alexandra said it was necessary. And if Alexandra told you to jump off a bridge, don't be condescending. I'm not being condescending. I'm asking you to think for yourself, to question whether what you're doing is right or just convenient. Charlotte wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking very young despite being 23. It's too late now anyway. The settlement's final. We can't undo it. No, I agreed. You can't. She looked at me with something that might have been hope. But we can still be a family, right? This doesn't have to destroy us. I wanted to tell her the truth. That we'd never really been a family. Not in the ways that mattered. That Catherine's absence had created a void none of us knew how to fill. That her siblings were destroying what little remained with their greed and their certainty that worth was measured in inheritance. Instead, I just said, the keys are in the kitchen drawer. Take them. She took them. Left without hugging me, without saying she loved me, without any of the gestures that might have suggested this was temporary, that reconciliation was possible. I was alone again in the house full of ghosts. The board meeting was exactly what I expected it to be. I arrived early, parked in the visitor section. My executive parking space had already been reassigned, and took the elevator to the top floor. The same elevator I'd ridden 100 times to have lunch with Catherine, to attend company parties, to exist on the periphery of her professional life. The boardroom was full when I entered. Alexandra sat at the head of the table, in Catherine's chair, looking like she'd been born for this moment. Brandon sat to her right, uncomfortable in a suit that cost more than most people's cars. Charlotte wasn't there, she wasn't on the board, hadn't earned that position yet. The other board members, people Catherine had recruited, people who'd helped build Meridian into what it was, looked uncomfortable. They nodded at me as I took a seat at the far end of the table. The seat reserved for minor shareholders, observers, people who no longer mattered. Thank you all for coming, Alexandra began, and her voice was pure Catherine. confident, controlled, commanding. I know the past few weeks have been difficult for everyone. We've lost a visionary leader, a brilliant CEO, someone who was Meridian Technologies. Past tense, was, as if Catherine's influence had died with her. But we're still here, Alexandra continued, and Meridian is still here. And it's our responsibility, my responsibility, to carry forward my mother's legacy. She clicked to the first slide of her presentation. Revenue projections, market analysis, strategic initiatives. Under my leadership, we're going to take Meridian in a new direction, she said. We're going to be more aggressive in acquisitions, more innovative in product development, more dominant in the quantum computing space. David Park, the CFO who'd worked with Catherine for 15 years, raised his hand. Alexandra, your mother spent the last year pivoting away from quantum computing. She believed the market was oversaturated, that we needed to focus on AI integration instead. My mother was brilliant, Alexandra said smoothly. But she was also conservative in her later years. The market has changed. We need to change with it. Or, I said quietly from the end of the table, we need to understand why she made the decisions she made before we reverse them. Everyone turned to look at me. Alexandra's expression was carefully neutral. David, she said. Not Dad, just David, establishing distance. You're welcome to observe, but strategic decisions will be made by the board's executive committee, of which I'm not a member. You hold 8% of company stock. That doesn't give you voting power on operational decisions. It gives me the right to speak. Of course. And we value your perspective. The pause before perspective was deliberate. But, respectfully, you don't have the technical background or business experience to... I was married to the woman who built this company for 23 years. I sat through 1,000 dinners where she worked through problems. I read every report she brought home. I listened to every late-night phone call, where she made decisions that shaped Meridian's future. I leaned forward. I may not have an MBA from Wharton like you, Alexandra, but I understand this company better than you think. Silence. Uncomfortable, electric silence. Jennifer Martinez, head of R&D, cleared her throat. David makes a good point. Catherine's decisions were always data-driven. Before we reverse her strategic direction, shouldn't we review her reasoning? We have reviewed it, Brandon interjected. And we believe the quantum computing pivot is the right move. Based on what analysis? David Park asked. Based on market trends, competitor movements, revenue potential. Can you show us that analysis? Brandon looked at Alexandra. She clicked to another slide, a single page of bullet points, surface-level observations, nothing like the comprehensive reports Catherine used to produce. I watched the other board members exchange glances. They saw it too. The difference between Catherine's meticulous preparation and her children's superficial understanding. This is preliminary, Alexandra said, sensing the room turning. We'll have more detailed projections at next month's meeting. Next month? Jennifer leaned back. You want to pivot the entire company's strategic direction based on preliminary analysis? I want to move decisively. That's what leaders do. Leaders also do their homework, David Park said quietly. The meeting deteriorated from there. Alexandra pushed her agenda. The veteran board members pushed back. Brandon got defensive. Voices rose. The professional courtesy that had characterized Catherine's meetings dissolved into something uncomfortably close to an argument. I sat at the end of the table and said nothing more. Just watched. Just observed. Just waited for Catherine's plan to unfold. Because this was part of it, I realized. This moment when my children's incompetence would start to show. When the people who'd respected Catherine would start to question whether her children deserved the power they'd inherited. The meeting ended without consensus. Alexandra adjourned with forced confidence, but I could see the cracks in her composure. Could see the way she gripped her presentation remote a little too tightly, the way her smile was just slightly forced. As everyone filed out, David Park fell into step beside me. "That was a disaster," he said quietly. "It was a beginning." He looked at me sharply. "What does that mean?" "It means they're not ready. They don't understand what Catherine built, or why she built it the way she did. They see Meridian as an asset to be managed, not a vision to be fulfilled. And you're just going to let them run it into the ground?" "I'm going to let them learn." "At what cost?" I thought about the flash drive, the recordings, the evidence Catherine had compiled. "At whatever cost the lesson requires," I said. That night, I went through the house with a notebook, cataloging my own memories. The living room where we'd celebrated Alexandra's graduation, the dining room where we'd hosted Thanksgiving dinners that Catherine usually missed, the kitchen where I'd made countless meals for children who were too busy to appreciate them. Every room held ghosts. I was in Catherine's study when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Chen? This is Rebecca Thornton. I'm an investigative journalist with the Business Chronicle." My stomach tightened. "How can I help you?" "I'm working on a story about Meridian Technologies, about the transition of leadership following your wife's death. I was hoping you might be willing to comment." "I don't think that's appropriate." "Mr. Chen, I've been reviewing public records. The settlement you agreed to was unusual. You gave up an enormous amount of wealth and control. Some people are wondering why." "Some people should mind their own business." "With all due respect, Meridian is a publicly traded company. When there's a major change in leadership and ownership structure, that's news. And when the change involves allegations of undue influence that were suddenly dropped in exchange for a settlement, that raises questions." "What kind of questions?" "Questions about whether the allegations were ever legitimate. Questions about whether your stepchildren—" "They're my children," I interrupted. "Not stepchildren. I raised them." "I apologize." "Questions about whether your children pressured you into a settlement you didn't want. Whether elder financial abuse might be involved." "Elder financial abuse." The words hung in the air like an accusation in reverse. "I'm 53, I said. Hardly elderly, but vulnerable, grieving, potentially susceptible to pressure from your late wife's children who—" "Miss Thornton, I appreciate your concern, but I signed that settlement voluntarily. I'm not being abused or pressured. I made a choice." "Why?" The question was simple. The answer was anything but. "Because some battles aren't worth fighting," I said finally. "Because my relationship with my children matters more than money. Because I'd rather have peace than victory." "That's very noble. It's also exactly what someone would say if they were being coerced." "I'm not being coerced." "Then why did you agree to give up everything your wife clearly intended you to have?" I closed my eyes, thought about Catherine's recordings, about the plan unfolding exactly as she'd designed it, about the fact that I couldn't reveal any of it yet, not until the time was right. "No comment," I said. "Mr. Chen." "No comment, Miss Thornton. Please don't contact me again." I hung up, sat in the darkness of Catherine's study, listening to my heart pound. The story was getting out. The questions were being asked. The scrutiny was beginning. Good. Catherine had anticipated this too, had known that her children's greed would attract attention, that the settlement would raise eyebrows, that journalists would start digging. Let them dig. Let them ask questions. Let them start to uncover the truth. Because the truth was always going to come out. Catherine had made sure of that. The only question was timing. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Have you seen the pre-market trading on Meridian stock?" I opened my trading app. Meridian's stock price was down 7% in after-hours trading. Major drop. The kind of drop that signaled investor concern. Another text from Marcus. Board meeting must have leaked. Investors getting nervous about new leadership. I stared at the numbers on my screen, at the red arrows pointing down, at the beginning of what Catherine had predicted would happen. The market was smarter than my children. The market could sense incompetence. The market was already betting against them. And they'd only been in charge for 3 weeks. I thought about texting back, offering some commentary. But what was there to say? This was inevitable. This was the natural consequence of putting unqualified people in charge of something they didn't understand. This was the lesson beginning to unfold. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up the files from Catherine's flash drive, found the recording I'd listened to a dozen times already. Her voice filled the study. They're going to fail, David, not because I want them to fail, but because I never taught them how to succeed. I gave them everything except the tools to handle having everything. And now you're going to watch them learn the hard way what I should have taught them all along. Pause. It will hurt. Watching them struggle, watching them fail. You'll want to step in, to save them, to protect them from the consequences of their own actions. Don't let them fall. Let them hit bottom, because that's the only way they'll learn to stand on their own. Another pause, longer this time. I know I'm asking too much. I know I'm leaving you to do the hard thing I never had the courage to do myself. But David, if you love them, if we ever love them, you'll let this happen. You'll let them fail. And then, when they're ready, when they're finally ready to learn, you'll show them these recordings. You'll give them the truth. You'll give them the choice to become better than we were. The recording ended. I sat in the darkness, listening to the silence after Catherine's voice, and understood that I was exactly where she'd planned for me to be. Powerless, but not helpless. Watching, but not intervening. Waiting for the perfect moment to reveal what she'd left behind. The truth that would either save them or destroy them. And I wouldn't know which until it was too late to change course. Outside, the last patches of snow were finally melting. Spring was coming, whether anyone was ready for it or not. I moved out of the house on a Thursday in April. 60 days, as requested. 60 days to pack up 2 decades of life into boxes that professional movers handled with efficient indifference. They wrapped Catherine's things, my things, our things, in bubble wrap and labeled them with codes that meant nothing to anyone but the moving company. "Where are we taking everything, Mr. Chen?" the foreman asked, clipboard in hand, as if this were a normal relocation and not an evacuation. "Storage," I said, "for now." I'd rented a condo downtown, 15th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city. 2 bedrooms I didn't need. Modern, anonymous, nothing like the house where I'd raised my children. Nothing that would remind me of Catherine every time I turned a corner. The realtor had been enthusiastic. Great investment property, perfect for a professional looking to downsize. Downsize. As if I were voluntarily simplifying my life rather than being forced out of my own home by my own children. Alexandra came by on moving day. Didn't help, just supervised. Walking through rooms with an interior designer who kept making notes about refreshing the space and honoring the bones of the house while bringing it into the contemporary era. Translation. Erasing every trace of Catherine and me. "We're thinking of opening up this wall," the designer said, gesturing to the wall between the kitchen and dining room. "Create a more open concept flow." That wall had family photos on it. Pictures of Alexandra's first day of school, Brandon's soccer trophies, Charlotte's art projects from elementary school. A timeline of their childhood, carefully curated by me, because Catherine had been too busy to manage such things. "Great idea," Alexandra said. "Very modern." I watched from the doorway, invisible to them, as they planned the demolition of my life. "Dad," Alexandra finally noticed me. "The movers said they need access to the master bedroom." "It's not locked." "I know, but there are some of Mom's things still in there. Personal items. We'd like to go through them before they're packed." "Personal items. Catherine's jewelry, her clothes, the love letters I'd written her in the early years, before she got too busy to read them. "Take what you want," I said. She looked at me strangely. "You don't want any of it?" "I have what I need." What I needed was locked in a safety deposit box downtown. Everything else was just objects, artifacts of a life that had ended the moment Catherine's heart stopped. Alexandra disappeared into the master bedroom with the designer. I heard them opening drawers, discussing what to keep and what to donate. Efficient, professional, cold. I walked out to the garden one last time. Catherine's roses were blooming early this year, encouraged by an unseasonably warm April. Red, white, pink colors she'd chosen from a catalog without ever seeing them in person. I'd been the one to plant them, to tend them, to cut back the dead growth each fall, and watch them resurrect each spring. "We're going to redesign the garden," Alexandra said, appearing behind me. "The landscaper thinks we should do something more contemporary. Maybe a Zen garden. Very clean lines. Your mother planted these roses." "I know, but they require a lot of maintenance. The landscaper said a Zen garden would be more sustainable." Sustainable? As if that's what mattered. As if roses that had bloomed for 15 years should be torn out because they required care. "Do what you want," I said. "It's your house now." "Dad, don't be like that." "Like what?" "Bitter. You agreed to this. You signed the papers." "I did." "Then why do you keep acting like we're destroying something sacred? It's just a house. Just things." I looked at her, my daughter, wearing her mother's earrings, standing in her mother's garden, speaking with her mother's casual dismissal of anything that couldn't be quantified or monetized. "You're right," I said. "It's just things." I left her standing there among the roses she was planning to uproot. The condo was empty when I arrived that evening. The movers had delivered everything to storage except the basics I'd asked them to bring. A bed, a couch, some kitchen essentials. The space echoed. I stood at the window, looking out at the city lights, at the buildings where people were working late, building empires, or just paying bills. Catherine's office building was visible from here, 17 blocks north. I could see the top floors lit up, where someone, probably Alexandra, was working late, playing CEO, learning that the job was harder than it looked. My phone had been buzzing all day. Text messages from people who'd heard about the move, about the settlement, about the changing of the guard at Meridian. From Jennifer Martinez, head of R&D. "David, I'm sorry about everything. If you ever want to talk, I'm here." From David Park, the CFO. "This isn't how it should have ended. Catherine would be heartbroken." From Marcus. "Please tell me you're not living in some depressing bachelor pad feeling sorry for yourself." I didn't respond to any of them. What was there to say? Instead, I opened my laptop and checked the things I'd been checking obsessively for 3 weeks. Meridian's stock price, trading volume, analyst reports. The news wasn't good for my children. Stock down another 4% today, 12% total since Alexandra took over. Analysts were starting to ask questions in their reports. Meridian Technologies, under new leadership following the death of visionary CEO Catherine Chen, has announced a strategic pivot back to quantum computing. However, market observers note this reversal of Chen's final strategic direction raises questions about the new leadership's understanding of the company's competitive position. Another report, more pointed. Alexandra Chen, daughter of late CEO Catherine Chen, lacks her mother's technical background and operational experience. While she holds an MBA from Wharton, her resume shows no significant accomplishments outside of positions at Meridian Technologies, raising concerns about nepotism versus merit in the succession plan. The market was doing what I couldn't, holding my children accountable. There was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, hadn't even told most people my new address yet. I opened it to find Charlotte standing in the hallway, holding a bottle of wine and looking miserable. "Daddy, can I come in?" I stepped aside. She entered, looked around at the sparse, impersonal space. "This is depressing," she said. "It's temporary." "Is it?" She set the wine bottle on the kitchen counter, expensive Bordeaux, probably from Catherine's collection. "Or is this your life now? Alone in a condo, exiled from your own family?" "I wasn't exiled. I left. Because we forced you to." "I didn't argue. We both knew it was true." Charlotte opened the wine without asking, found 2 glasses in the mostly empty cabinets, poured generously. "Alexandra is losing her mind," she said, handing me a glass. "The board hates her. The stock is tanking. Investors are calling for emergency meetings. Brandon is useless. He just sits in his office playing on his phone, and I'm supposed to smile at company events and pretend everything is fine while our mother's legacy burns down around us." "Then stop it." "How?" "Admit you're not ready. Bring in professional management. Step back." Charlotte laughed, bitter and sharp. "You don't know Alexandra if you think she'd ever admit she's in over her head. She'd rather watch Meridian collapse than admit she can't do what Mom did. Then let it collapse." She stared at me. "You can't mean that." "Can't I? Your mother built that company with her own hands. You 3 inherited it without earning it. If you destroy it through incompetence, maybe that's the lesson you need to learn." "That's cruel." "Is it? Or is it honest?" I took a sip of wine. It was excellent. Wasted on this moment. Your mother spent 23 years building something extraordinary. She sacrificed her health, her family, her marriage. She gave everything to Meridian. And in 3 weeks, you're undoing it all. We're trying. You're failing. Trying isn't enough. Understanding what you're doing wrong and fixing it, that would be enough. But you can't fix what you don't understand. And you don't understand what your mother built. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "Then help us. Please. Come back. Advise us. You know the company. You know what Mom would have done." This was the moment. The moment I could step in, could save them from themselves, could prevent the disaster that Catherine had predicted and prepared for. But Catherine's voice was in my head. Let them fail. Let them hit bottom. That's the only way they'll learn. "No," I said quietly. "Why not?" "Because you need to learn to swim before you drown, and I can't teach you while I'm holding you up." "So you're just going to watch us fail?" "I'm going to watch you learn." She threw her wine glass. It shattered against the wall, red liquid bleeding down onto my new floor. "I hate you," she screamed. "I hate that you're so calm, so reasonable, so fucking noble about all of this. Mom is dead. We're drowning. And you're acting like it's some kind of life lesson." I didn't move, just watched her fall apart. This daughter I'd raised, who'd never learned to handle her emotions because Catherine had taught her to bury them. "I don't need you to hate me, Charlotte. But I do need you to grow up." She grabbed her purse, headed for the door, stopped with her hand on the knob. "You know what the worst part is?" Her voice was quieter now, broken. "I think you actually loved Mom. I think you really did support her, sacrifice for her, build your whole life around her success, and we treated you like you were nothing, like you were just in the way." "Yes," I said. "You did. I'm sorry." "I know. But you're still not going to help us." "No." She left. The door closed with a soft click that felt louder than if she'd slammed it. I cleaned up the broken glass, wiped the wine from the wall, poured myself another glass from the bottle she'd left behind, and checked my phone. A news alert. Meridian Technologies stock falls to 6-month low following reports of internal turmoil and strategic uncertainty. Another alert. Major investor demands emergency board meeting to address leadership concerns at Meridian Technologies. It was happening. Faster than I'd expected, but inevitably. Catherine had predicted this, the market's loss of confidence, the investors' panic, the board's revolt. My children were 3 weeks into their inheritance and already losing it. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. I wasn't required to attend. My 8% stake didn't give me a seat at the table for emergency sessions, but I went anyway. Sat in the observation gallery, where shareholders and journalists could watch the proceedings through glass. The boardroom was tense. Alexandra sat at the head of the table, but her authority was visibly eroding. David Park had the financial reports spread out in front of him like evidence at a trial. Jennifer Martinez looked grim. The outside directors people Catherine had recruited for their expertise and independence looked like they regretted accepting their positions. And at the other end of the table, taking up 2 seats, were representatives from Vanguard Investments, one of Meridian's largest institutional shareholders. The senior partner, a woman named Helen Zhao, didn't waste time on pleasantries. Miss Chen, Vanguard holds 18% of Meridian's outstanding shares. Over the past 3 weeks, we've watched the stock price drop 12%, while your leadership team has announced strategic changes that contradict your late mother's final direction. We need to understand what's happening. Alexandra's composure was perfect, but I could see the strain around her eyes. We're in a transition period. Some volatility is expected. This isn't volatility. This is freefall. Helen slid a report across the table. Your mother spent 18 months researching the quantum computing market before deciding to pivot away from it. She concluded the market was oversaturated, the technology wasn't ready, and Meridian's competitive advantage lay in AI integration. 3 weeks after her death, you've reversed that decision. Why? Because the market has changed. In 3 weeks? Miss Zhao, I understand your concerns, but Meridian's board has confidence in our new strategic direction. Does it? Helen looked around the table. Mr. Park, as CFO, do you support this quantum computing pivot? David Park didn't hesitate.
No, I think it's premature and poorly researched.
Miss Martinez, as head of R&D, do you believe Meridian has the technical capability to compete in quantum computing? Jennifer looked at Alexandra, then at Helen.
Not without significant investment in talent and infrastructure. Investment we haven't budgeted for.
And yet the board approved this strategic change? Silence. Actually, Jennifer said carefully, the board didn't approve it. The executive committee did. And the executive committee consists of Alexandra, her brother Brandon, and 2 outside directors who admitted they didn't fully understand the technical implications. Alexandra's face went pale. That's out of context.
Is it? Helen pulled out another document. I have the meeting minutes right here. The vote was 3-1, with Jennifer Martinez dissenting.
David Park wasn't even present. He was excluded from the meeting despite being CFO.
He was in Japan on business. You scheduled the meeting while he was in Japan. Convenient.
The room was silent except for the hum of the ventilation system. I watched from behind the glass as my daughter realized she was cornered. Miss Chen, Helen continued, Vanguard has serious concerns about the current leadership structure at Meridian. Your mother was an exceptional CEO. She built this company from nothing. She had technical expertise, business acumen, and decades of experience. You have an MBA and 3 weeks in the job.
That's not a criticism of your potential, it's an observation about your readiness.
I'm ready, Alexandra said, but her voice was thin. Are you? Because the market doesn't seem to think so. Investors don't seem to think so. And based on what I'm hearing around this table, your own board doesn't seem to think so.
Brandon stood up, face red.
This is ridiculous. Alexandra is Catherine Chen's daughter. She grew up in this company. She understands it better than anyone. Does she? Helen looked at him coolly. Mr. Chen, what's Meridian's current burn rate? Our what? Burn rate. How much cash are we spending per month? Brandon looked at Alexandra. She looked at David Park. I'll send you the reports, Brandon said weakly. You don't know, do you? You sit on this board. You voted to change the company's entire strategic direction, and you don't even know our basic financial metrics. The silence was excruciating. Helen stood. "Here's what's going to happen. Vanguard is calling for a vote of no confidence in the current executive committee. We're proposing the board appoint an interim CEO with relevant industry experience while we conduct a proper search for permanent leadership. We're also proposing that the executive committee be restructured to include all senior officers, not just family members and their allies." "You can't do that," Alexandra said. "We absolutely can, and we will. The vote will take place at next week's regular board meeting. I suggest you prepare accordingly." Helen left her associate following. The boardroom erupted in tense discussion. I watched Alexandra sitting at the head of the table, her mother's seat, her mother's company, her mother's legacy, and saw the moment she understood what was happening. She was losing. Not to me, not to some outside enemy, to her own incompetence. Through the glass, our eyes met. She saw me sitting there, watching, and I saw something in her expression I'd never seen before. Fear, not of failure. She'd failed at things before. Fear that I'd been right. That she wasn't ready. That inheriting something didn't mean deserving it. Fear that maybe, just maybe, her mother had known exactly what she was doing when she structured her will the way she did. I stood to leave. Walked out of the observation gallery, took the elevator down, stepped out into spring sunshine that felt harsh and unforgiving. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Did you see that board meeting? Helen Zhao just destroyed them." Another text from Charlotte. "Daddy, please. We need help. This is falling apart." Another from Brandon. "This is your fault. You could have fought for us. You could have protected Mom's legacy." I stared at that last message for a long time. Protected Mom's legacy. As if giving them everything they wanted was protection. As if watching them destroy themselves was abandonment. They still didn't understand. Catherine's legacy wasn't the company. It was the lesson. And the lesson was just beginning. I deleted the messages without responding. Walked back to my empty condo. And waited for the next domino to fall. Because they would fall. All of them. Exactly as Catherine had predicted. The question wasn't whether my children would hit bottom. The question was whether they'd survive the impact. The vote of no confidence was scheduled for Thursday. Wednesday night, Alexandra showed up at my door. I almost didn't answer. I'd been sitting in the dark, looking out at the city, drinking scotch that Catherine had bought for our 20th anniversary and never opened. She'd been too busy. Always too busy. The bottle had sat in our liquor cabinet for 3 years, aging like our marriage, waiting for a celebration that never came. Now, I was drinking it alone in a condo that smelled like fresh paint and regret. The knocking persisted, insistent, desperate. I opened the door. Alexandra looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her makeup was smudged, her hair usually perfect pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and a sweater instead of her usual armor of designer suits. She looked young, vulnerable. Almost like the daughter I remembered before Catherine's success had transformed her into something harder. "Can I come in?" Her voice was small. I stepped aside. She entered, looked around at the sparse furnishings, the half-empty bottle of scotch on the coffee table, the view of the city that included her mother's company building. "Nice view," she said. "It serves its purpose." "Can you see Meridian from here?" "Yes." "Do you watch it?" "Watch the lights on the executive floors and wonder what we're doing, what we're destroying, and Promessen. Wonder what we're destroying, wonder what we're doing. .com. End quote. I didn't answer. The answer was yes, and we both knew it. Alexandra moved to the window, touched the glass the way she'd touched the window in Catherine's office weeks ago. Same gesture, same uncertainty, different context. "The vote is tomorrow," she said. "I know. I'm going to lose. Probably. David Park has the votes lined up. Helen Zhao has convinced the outside directors. Even Jennifer Martinez, who I thought was loyal to Mom, is supporting the no-confidence motion." She laughed, bitter,
and broken. 3 weeks. I lasted 3 weeks.
You lasted exactly as long as your competence allowed.
She flinched. You could sound less satisfied about it.
I'm not satisfied. I'm sad. There's a difference. Bye. Are you sad? Or are you sitting up here in your tower, drinking expensive scotch, watching your children destroy everything their mother built, and thinking, I told them so? The accusation hung in the air between us.
Both, I said honestly. I'm devastated watching you fail. And yes, part of me knew this would happen. Your mother knew it too.
Alexandra turned to face me. What does that mean? You keep saying things like that. Your mother knew. Your mother predicted. What are you talking about?
This was the moment. The moment I could tell her about the flash drive, the recordings, the evidence Catherine had compiled. The moment I could show her that her mother had seen this coming, had documented every mistake, had prepared for exactly this scenario. But it wasn't time yet. Not quite.
I'm talking about the fact that your mother understood competence, I said instead.
She understood that running a company like Meridian required years of experience, technical knowledge, and the kind of judgment that only comes from failure and learning. She understood that you weren't ready. Then why did she leave me anything? Why give me a stake in the company if she thought I'd destroy it? Because she hoped you'd surprise her. She hoped you'd grow into it. She hoped that when faced with the reality of leadership, you'd recognize your limitations and ask for help.
I did ask for help. I asked you.
You asked me to save you from consequences. That's not the same thing.
Alexandra's composure cracked. Tears spilled over, cutting tracks through what was left of her makeup. I don't know what to do. Everyone's expecting me to resign tomorrow.
To just give up, like you did.
I didn't give up. I made a choice.
What's the difference?
Giving up is surrender. Making a choice is agency. I chose peace over victory. You need to choose reality over ego.
What does that mean?
I poured another glass of scotch, handed it to her. She took it automatically, drank without tasting.
It means tomorrow, when that vote happens, you have 2 choices, I said. You can fight it, dig in, refuse to accept the results, make it ugly and public and destructive. Or you can acknowledge that you're not ready,
step aside gracefully, and let someone qualified take over while you learn what you need to learn. If I step aside, I lose everything. Right bride, right bride, right bride, right bride, right bride. No, if you step aside, you keep your dignity. You keep the possibility of coming back when you're ready. You keep your relationship with the board, with the company, with the people who want Meridian to succeed. I paused. If you fight, you lose all of that. You become the cautionary tale. The CEO who destroyed her mother's legacy because she couldn't admit she needed help.
Alexandra set the scotch down, untouched.
You're asking me to humiliate myself. I'm asking you to be honest. There's no humiliation in honesty.
You don't understand. You've never understood. This is all I have. The company is all I have. Without it, I'm just...
What? Catherine Chen's daughter? A woman with an MBA from Wharton and a trust fund most people couldn't earn in 10 lifetimes? How terrible. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. Without the company, I'm nothing. I have no accomplishments of my own, no identity outside of being her daughter. I thought if I could run Meridian, if I could be successful like she was, then maybe I'd finally be enough. There it was, the truth, underneath all the greed and ambition. The desperate need for validation that Catherine had never provided because she'd been too busy building her empire to notice her daughter drowning in her shadow. Alexandra, I said gently, you were always enough. Your mother's failure wasn't that you weren't good enough. It was that she never told you that you were. She told me I needed to earn things, to prove myself. She told you that because she believed it, because she'd had to earn everything, prove everything, fight for every inch of success. But she forgot that she was proving herself to strangers and competitors. You were trying to prove yourself to your mother, and mothers aren't supposed to require proof. Alexandra's face crumpled. I miss her. I miss her so much. And I hate that I miss her because she was never really there. How do you miss someone who was always absent? You miss the possibility of them, the mother you hoped she'd become, once she had time, once she achieved enough, once she could finally stop running and just be. But she never stopped. No, she never did. We stood in silence. Two people who'd both loved Catherine Chen in our own ways, both been failed by her in different ways, both left to navigate the wreckage she'd left behind. What should I do tomorrow? Alexandra asked finally. Tell the truth. Tell the board you're not ready. Tell them you need time to learn. Tell them you'll support an interim CEO while you work on developing the skills you need. I met her eyes. Tell them you're Catherine Chen's daughter, but you're not Catherine Chen. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And that's okay. Brandon and Charlotte will think I'm weak. Brandon and Charlotte are drowning too. They're just too proud to admit it. And you? What will you think? I'll think you're finally growing up. She left shortly after that, without finishing her drink, without hugging me, without any of the gestures that might suggest reconciliation was possible. But something had shifted. Some wall had cracked. I watched from my window as she got into her car 17 floors below. Watched her sit there for 10 minutes, not moving, probably crying. Watched her finally drive away into the night. And wondered if Catherine had predicted this moment too. This conversation. This small breach in my daughter's armor. Probably. Catherine had been good at predicting everything except her own death. The board meeting was a massacre. I watched from the observation gallery again, along with 3 journalists and a handful of shareholders who'd sensed blood in the water. Helen Zhao presented the motion with clinical precision, cited the stock price drop, the strategic missteps, the lack of experience in critical leadership positions. Showed slides with data, graphs, comparisons to other tech companies that had failed after founders died and unqualified family members took over. It was brutal and necessary and absolutely devastating. David Park spoke next, outlining the financial concerns, how Alexandra's quantum computing pivot would require $200 million in capital that wasn't budgeted. How Brandon had approved vendor contracts without proper vetting, costing the company millions in unnecessary expenses. How Charlotte's marketing initiatives had been incoherent and poorly executed. Jennifer Martinez spoke about R&D, about projects being canceled midstream because Alexandra didn't understand their importance, about talented engineers leaving because they had no confidence in the new leadership, about the brain drain that was already beginning. One by one, they built the case. And through it all, Alexandra sat at the head of the table, silent and still. Brandon tried to defend them. Stood up, face red, voice shaking. This is a coup! You're using a temporary downturn to oust legitimate leadership. My mother left this company to us. We have every right. Your mother, Helen Zhao interrupted, left controlling interest to your father, who chose, for reasons I still don't fully understand, to transfer it to you. That doesn't make you qualified. That makes you fortunate. And right now, you're squandering that fortune. You can't. Mr. Chen, sit down. You're embarrassing yourself. Brandon sat. The vote was called. 7 in favor of the no confidence motion, 2 against Brandon, and 1 outside director who apparently still believed in family loyalty over competence. 1 abstention, Alexandra herself. The motion passes, Helen announced. Effective immediately. The current executive committee structure is dissolved. The board will appoint an interim CEO within 72 hours. Alexandra Chen will remain on the board as a non-executive director.
Brandon Chen's position is subject to review. Charlotte Chen's employment continues in her current role, pending performance evaluation. It was done. 3 weeks after inheriting everything, my children had lost control of it. I expected Alexandra to fight, to argue, to make it ugly. Instead, she stood. "Before this meeting adjourns," she said, her voice remarkably steady, "I'd like to make a statement." The room went quiet. "You're right," Alexandra said. "All of you. I'm not ready to run this company. I thought I was. I thought growing up watching my mother, learning from her example, would be enough. It's not. And I apologize to this board, to Meridian's employees, to our investors for believing that inheritance was the same as qualification." Someone's phone buzzed. One of the journalists in the gallery began typing frantically. "I support this motion," Alexandra continued. "I support bringing in professional management. And I commit to using this time to learn, to develop the skills I need, to earn the position I thought I deserved, simply by being Catherine Chen's daughter." She looked directly at the observation gallery. Directly at me. "My mother built something extraordinary. I'm not going to be the one who destroys it out of pride." She sat down. The room erupted in discussion. Helen Zhao looked surprised, but pleased. David Park looked relieved. Jennifer Martinez was crying, and I sat behind the glass, watching my daughter do the hardest thing she'd ever done, and felt something like hope. The media coverage was swift and merciless. Meridian Technologies in crisis. Founder's daughter steps down after 3-week tenure. Chen dynasty crumbles. Board ousts. Family leadership at tech giant. From billion-dollar inheritance to no confidence vote, the spectacular failure of Meridian's new leadership. My phone exploded with messages. From Marcus, "Did you see? She actually resigned. Never thought I'd see the day." From Charlotte, "The press is outside my apartment. I can't leave. They want statements about family dysfunction and the curse of inherited wealth." From Brandon, "This is a disaster. We need to talk. All of us. Now." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I went to the bank, retrieved the safety deposit box, pulled out Catherine's flash drive. Because it was almost time. The children had failed, just as Catherine predicted. They'd hit bottom, or close to it. The public humiliation was complete. The consequences were real. Now came the next phase. The revelation. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, navigated to a folder I hadn't opened yet. Inside, legal documents, contracts, financial records, and a video file labeled simply, "For David when they're ready." I clicked play. Catherine appeared on screen. This video was different from the will statement, more raw, more personal. She looked exhausted, sitting in her office late at night, the city lights behind her. "David, if you're watching this, then everything has happened exactly as I knew it would. The children have challenged the will. You've settled. They've taken control. And they've failed spectacularly." She smiled, sad and knowing. "I know what you're thinking. You're wondering when to show them the rest, the recordings, the evidence of their incompetence, the documentation of every mistake, every lie, every moment where they proved they weren't ready." She leaned forward, her face filling the screen. "Don't show them yet. Wait. Wait until they understand what failure feels like. Wait until they're humble. Wait until they're finally ready to listen instead of defend." She paused. "But David, there's something else. Something I never told you. Something that changes everything." My heart started pounding. The company, Meridian. I didn't actually give them full control. She pulled out a document, held it up to the camera. "See this? It's a poison pill provision. It's in the company bylaws, buried in legal language that none of them read.
It states that if there's a vote of no confidence in family leadership, control reverts to a designated trustee until such time as qualified family members can demonstrate competence to a board-appointed committee. I stared at the screen. And who's the designated trustee? David. Take a guess. She smiled. You are. You've been the trustee all along. I just needed them to fail first. Needed them to understand that they hadn't earned anything. Needed them to be broken down before they could be built back up. The screen went dark for a moment. Then Catherine's face reappeared. Surprise, she said softly. You didn't lose everything. You never lost anything. You just waited while I taught our children the most important lesson I never taught them while I was alive, that nothing worth having comes without struggle. That inheritance without earning is just another form of poverty. She wiped her eyes. Tomorrow or whenever you're watching this, you'll receive papers from my lawyers. Papers that prove you're still the majority controller of Meridian Technologies. Held in trust, but real nonetheless. Papers that give you the power to decide what happens next. Another pause. And David, here's the choice you'll have to make. Do you take back control? Run the company yourself? Or appoint someone to run it? Let the children have nothing until they've proven they deserve something? She shook her head. Or do you do what I hope you'll do, what I'm asking you to do? Give them one more chance. Let them work under professional management. Let them learn. Let them earn their way back. And when they're ready, if they're ready, let them try again. Her voice broke. I was a terrible mother, David. I know that. I chose work over family 1,000 times. I taught them all the wrong lessons. But you were a good father. You were always a good father. So I'm asking you to father them one more time. Give them the chance I never gave them. The chance to fail, and learn, and grow, and become something better than I was. The video ended. I sat in the darkness of my condo, staring at the blank screen, understanding finally what Catherine had done. She hadn't left them everything. She'd left them a test. And me? She'd left me the power to decide if they'd passed. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Chen? This is Patricia Morrison from Morrison & Associates. I was one of your late wife's attorneys. I have some documents that require your immediate attention. When would you be available to meet? Tomorrow, I said, my voice hollow. Tomorrow afternoon. Excellent. I think you'll find these documents very illuminating. She hung up. I looked out at the city, at Meridian's building, where my children were probably still reeling from the vote, from the media coverage, from the spectacular failure of their inheritance. They thought they'd lost everything. They had no idea they'd never really had it to begin with. And I had no idea what I was going to do with the power Catherine had given me. The power to save them, or let them drown. The power to be the father they needed, or the judge they deserved. The power to finish Catherine's plan, or to write a different ending entirely. Outside, the city lights flickered like stars. Inside, I poured another drink and waited for tomorrow to bring whatever truth it would bring. Patricia Morrison's office was nothing like Marcus Webb's downtown tower with its glass walls and city views. This was old money, old law wood paneling and leather chairs, and the kind of quiet that money bought when it had been around long enough to stop shouting about itself. She was 70, maybe older, with white hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that had probably seen every permutation of human greed, stupidity, and family dysfunction that estate law could produce. Mr. Chen. She stood when her assistant showed me in, shook my hand with a grip that was surprisingly firm. Thank you for coming. I know the past few weeks have been difficult. That's one word for it. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. Between us sat a stack of documents, at least 4 inches thick, each tab labeled with dates, names, legal terms that meant nothing to me yet. Your wife was one of the most meticulous clients I've ever had. Patricia began. When she came to me 18 months ago to restructure her estate plan, she knew exactly what she wanted to accomplish. She also knew it would be complicated. She knew the children would challenge the will. She knew more than that. Patricia pulled out a document from the stack. She knew they'd win. She knew you'd settle. She knew they'd take control of Meridian and fail spectacularly. She predicted it all with disturbing accuracy. She was good at predictions. She was good at understanding human nature, her children's nature in particular. Patricia slid the document across the desk. This is the trust agreement. The one that's been active since the moment you signed the settlement papers. I picked it up. The legal language was dense, but certain phrases jumped out. Should familial control result in a no-confidence vote within 12 months of inheritance. Reversion of majority control to designated trustee. To designated trustee. Trustee shall have sole discretion regarding future distribution. And there, on page 7, in black and white, David Chen, designated trustee and ultimate beneficiary of the Catherine Chen Meridian Trust. I don't understand. I said, though I was beginning to. The settlement gave them controlling interest. The stock transfers were completed. How can there be a trust that supersedes that? Patricia smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Because your wife was smarter than their lawyers. The stock they received wasn't quite what they thought it was. One. She pulled out another document. Class B shares, non-voting stock, worth exactly what they appear to be worth on paper, generating the same dividends, tradable on the same markets. But without voting rights. The voting rights, the actual control of the company, were always held separately in the trust structure. They owned the value but not the power. Precisely. They got exactly what they wanted. The wealth. They just didn't get what they thought they wanted. Control. And because they never bothered to read the fine print, because they assumed stock meant voting stock, because their lawyers were focused on the settlement amount rather than the structure. They never knew. They never knew. And now, with the no-confidence vote triggering the reversion clause, the voting rights, the actual control of Meridian Technologies, belong to you. Always have. Really. You were just waiting for the trigger. I sat back in the leather chair, trying to process what this meant. Catherine had given them everything and nothing, had let them think they'd won while ensuring they couldn't actually destroy what she'd built, had given me the power all along, just dressed it up as surrender. Why? I asked. Why the elaborate charade? Why not just structure the will this way from the beginning? Because they needed to fail, Patricia said simply. Your wife was very clear about this. She said her children had never failed at anything that mattered. They'd never faced real consequences. They'd never learned that wanting something and deserving something are different things. She pulled out another document handwritten, this time. Catherine's precise, angular writing filled the page. This is a letter she left for you, Patricia said. She asked me to give it to you when we had this meeting, after you'd seen the legal structure, after you understood what she'd really done. I took the letter with shaking hands. David, if Patricia is giving you this, then the plan has worked. The children have failed. The board has revolted. You've discovered you still control everything. I imagine you're angry right now. Angry that I didn't tell you. Angry that I made you go through the settlement, the humiliation, the loss. Angry that I used you as part of this elaborate manipulation. You should be angry. I deserve your anger. But please try to understand. I couldn't tell you because you needed to be genuine. You needed to truly believe you were giving up everything. The children needed to see your real grief, your real resignation. If you'd known it was a performance, they would have sensed it. They're not as stupid as they seem. Just unprepared. And I needed them to fail completely. Not partially, not almost, completely. Because that's the only way they'd be broken enough to rebuild. Now you have a choice to make. You control Meridian. You control their inheritance. You control everything. Option 1. Take it all. Run the company yourself or appoint professional management. Let the children have their non-voting shares and the trust funds I set up, but nothing more. Let them live comfortable lives as passive beneficiaries of wealth they didn't earn. They'll be fine. Rich and aimless, but fine. Option 2. Give them another chance. But not the way I gave them chances, by handing them things. Give them the chance to earn. Let them work under the interim CEO. Let them prove themselves. Let them develop competence before they're given power. And only if they succeed, only if they truly grow, consider transferring control back to them. Or, option 3, something I haven't thought of, something only you, with your capacity for forgiveness and grace that I never had, could imagine. I'm not telling you what to do, David. For once in our marriage, I'm giving you complete authority to make the call. Because I was the one who broke them with my absence and my impossible standards. You're the one who might be able to fix them with your presence and your realistic expectations. Whatever you decide, know that I loved you. I loved you in the broken, insufficient way I was capable of loving anyone. I loved you enough to trust you with this, with them, with everything that mattered. I'm sorry I died before I could be better, before I could be the partner you deserved. But maybe this is my way of finally being your partner, of finally trusting you completely. Do what's right, David. You always knew how to do that, even when I didn't. Love, Catherine. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. Patricia was watching me with those sharp lawyer eyes. She was brilliant, you know, infuriating and absent and obsessive, but brilliant. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. You'll need to decide relatively soon. The board is appointing an interim CEO next week. They'll need to know the actual control structure. And Mr. Chen. She paused. The children will need to know the truth eventually. You can't keep this from them forever. Can't I? You could, but should you? They've been humiliated publicly. They've failed spectacularly. If you reveal now that they never actually had control, that the whole thing was an elaborate test, they failed. She shook her head. It could destroy them completely. Or it could be the wake-up call they need. But that's not a legal question. That's a moral one. I stood, gathered the documents Patricia had prepared, trusts, bylaws, voting rights agreements, all the legal infrastructure of Catherine's elaborate plan. Can I think about it? Of course. But Mr. Chen, while you're thinking, consider this. Your wife spent 18 months setting this up. She documented everything, planned everything, predicted everything. Everything, except one thing. What? What you would do with the power she gave you. That's the only variable she couldn't control. Patricia stood, walked me to the door. She trusted you. The question is, what does that trust require of you? I drove to the Meridian building. Hadn't been back since the board meeting, since watching Alexandra resign, since learning that my surrender had been an illusion all along. The lobby receptionist looked surprised to see me. Mr. Chen! I didn't know you'd be. Should I call someone? No, I'm just visiting. The security guard. Not Robert this time. Someone younger checked my ID carefully.
I'm sorry, sir, but you're not listed as an executive anymore.
I can't give you an access badge without approval from... It's fine, I said. I don't need to go upstairs. I'm just looking. I stood in the lobby of the company Catherine built, looking at the walls covered with patents, awards, photos of company milestones. There was Catherine cutting the ribbon at the new headquarters opening. Catherine accepting an industry award. Catherine on the cover of Forbes, looking fierce and unstoppable. No photos of me. No acknowledgement of the partner who'd made it all possible by handling everything she didn't have time for. But I hadn't expected any. That had never been the deal. Dad? I turned. Charlotte stood by the elevators, wearing her visitor badge. She'd been demoted from employee access after the board meeting. She looked smaller than I remembered, younger. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Remembering. We're not allowed up anymore. Not without supervision. It's humiliating." "Yes." She came closer, her voice dropping. "The press won't leave us alone. There are reporters parked outside my apartment. Brandon's hiding at his girlfriend's place. Alexandra won't return my calls." She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "We lost everything, Daddy. Everything Mom built. Everything you gave us. And we lost it in 3 weeks." "Yes," I said again. "Say something else. Please. Tell me we're terrible people. Tell me we deserved this. Tell me you told us so. Tell me something other than yes in that resigned voice, like you expected this all along. Would it help if I said those things?" "It would help if you seemed to care." Her voice echoed in the marble lobby. The receptionist and security guard were studiously not looking at us. "I care," I said quietly. "I care so much, it physically hurts." "But Charlotte, I told you this would happen. I warned you that you weren't ready. I offered to help, and you refused. What am I supposed to do now? Rescue you from consequences you earned?" "Mom would have." "No, she wouldn't have. Your mother believed in natural consequences. She believed people learned through failure. She just never applied that philosophy to you because she was never around long enough to see you fail." Charlotte wrapped her arms around herself. "I'm scared. The trust fund pays out, but it's not enough to live the way we were living. I'll have to sell the apartment, get a real job, live like everyone else? That's not what I meant, isn't it? I studied my youngest daughter, Charlotte. Having to work for a living isn't a punishment. Having to budget isn't a tragedy. Having to earn what you have instead of inheriting it isn't the end of your life. It's the beginning of actually having a life. Easy for you to say. You've still got millions from the settlement." Did I? Or did I have control of billions through the trust structure Catherine had created? The truth sat in my pocket, legal documents, letter, proof that I still held all the power. I could tell Charlotte right now. Could explain that they'd never really had control. That this whole disaster had been orchestrated. That their mother had set them up to fail as a teaching tool. But what would that accomplish? They'd already been humiliated. Adding "you were manipulated" to "you failed spectacularly" wouldn't help. Unless it would. Unless knowing their mother had engineered this, had predicted it, had tried in her own broken way to teach them, maybe that would give them something. Context. Understanding. A framework for the pain. "Charlotte," I said slowly, "what if I told you your mother knew this would happen?" She blinked. "What?" "What if I told you she predicted that you'd challenge the will, that I'd settle, that you'd take over and fail within months? What if she planned for all of it?" Charlotte's face went white. "That's impossible." "Is it? Your mother planned everything. Why would her death be any different?" "But why? Why would she?" Charlotte's voice broke. "Why would she set us up to fail? Not to fail, to learn. What's the difference? Failure is the lesson. What you do after failing is the test." Charlotte stared at me. "Do you know something? Do you know something you're not telling us?" Yes, I knew everything. I knew about the trust structure, the non-voting shares, the poison pill provision. I knew I still controlled Meridian, that their inheritance had been an illusion, that Catherine had orchestrated the most elaborate teaching moment in corporate history. But I also knew that telling them now
while they were still raw and defensive and broken, wouldn't help. They'd hear it as manipulation, as cruelty, as their mother's final betrayal. They needed more time, more failure, maybe, more reflection, more growth. Or maybe I was just rationalizing. Maybe I was keeping Catherine's secret because I liked having power for once, liked being the one who knew everything while they flailed in ignorance. "I know your mother loved you," I said finally, "in her own difficult way, and I know she wanted you to be better than you are. That's all any parent wants." Charlotte searched my face. "There's something you're not telling me." "There's a lot I'm not telling you. The question is whether you're ready to hear it." "I'm ready. Please. I need to understand what happened. Why Mom did what she did. Why you did what you did. All of it." I looked at my daughter, 23 years old, standing in the lobby of her mother's company, finally asking the right questions. "Not yet," I said. "Soon, but not yet." "Why not?" "Because you're still thinking about what you lost. You need to start thinking about what you could gain." What could I possibly gain from this disaster? Clarity, humility, competence. I paused. A relationship with your father. Gaff. She started crying. Real tears this time. Not the performance tears she'd used to try to manipulate me into helping them earlier. These were grief and shame and something that might have been hope. "I'm so sorry, Daddy. For everything. For the petition. For treating you like you didn't matter. For believing you were just in the way. Yes, I'm so sorry." I hugged her then, first time in years. She collapsed against me, sobbing, and I held her while security pretended not to watch, and I tried to decide what the right thing was. Tell them the truth now, when they were broken and receptive? Wait until they'd grown more, learned more, earned the right to know? Or never tell them? Let them believe they'd simply failed. Let the lesson be complete without revealing the manipulation behind it. Catherine had left the choice to me, had trusted me to know what was right. But I didn't know. I had no idea. All I knew was that my daughter was crying in my arms, and for the first time in years, she was really seeing me, really needing me, really acknowledging that I mattered. And maybe that was enough. For now, maybe the rest could wait. "Let's get coffee," I said. "Let's talk. Really talk. Not about the company or the settlement or what you lost. About us. About what happens next. About who you want to be when this is over." Charlotte pulled back, wiped her eyes. "Okay. Yes. I'd like that." We walked out of the building together, past the security guard, past the receptionist, past the walls covered with Catherine's achievements. And I thought about the documents in my car, the trust agreements, the voting rights, the power Catherine had given me, the power to save them or destroy them, the power to reveal the truth or keep it hidden, the power to be the father they needed or the judge they deserved. I didn't know what I was going to do, but at least I was finally asking the right questions. The coffee shop was deliberately chosen not one of the upscale places Alexandra frequented, but a small neighborhood cafe where nobody would recognize us or care about tech industry drama. Charlotte ordered something complicated, with oat milk and caramel. I got black coffee. We sat by the window, watching spring rain streak the glass. "Brandon's drinking," she said abruptly. "A lot. More than usual." "How much is usual?" "Enough that I'm worried. He won't answer my calls. When I went by his place, his girlfriend said he hasn't left the apartment in 4 days. I thought about Catherine's recordings, the ones documenting Brandon's gambling, his spending, his inability to handle stress or failure. She'd seen this coming too. And Alexandra? Working 18-hour days with the transition team. She's helping the interim CEO understand Mom's systems, her decision-making processes, everything. She's being helpful, cooperative. It's weird. Why is that weird?
Because Alexandra doesn't do cooperative. She does dominant. Charlotte picked at her muffin. It's like the board vote broke something in her, or fixed something. I can't tell which. We sat in silence. The cafe was full of people living normal lives, students studying, freelancers working on laptops, mothers with toddlers. People who'd never inherited billions, or destroyed companies, or discovered their whole lives were elaborate tests. Daddy, Charlotte said quietly, earlier, in the lobby, you said Mom knew this would happen. What did you mean? Here it was. The question I'd been avoiding. I could tell her everything, show her the documents Patricia had given me, explain the trust structure, the non-voting shares, the elaborate manipulation, give her the truth Catherine had prepared. Or I could wait, let her grow more. Let the interim CEO teach them what Catherine hadn't. Let them earn understanding, the way they needed to earn everything else. Your mother was brilliant at reading people, I said carefully. She understood motivations, weaknesses, patterns. She knew you three better than you knew yourselves. So she knew we'd fail. She knew you weren't ready. There's a difference. Is there? Charlotte's voice was bitter. Either way, she's gone, and we're disasters, and you're sitting here drinking coffee like none of it matters. It all matters. That's why I'm being careful. Careful about what? About how much truth to give them. About when to reveal Catherine's final manipulation. About whether to use the power I had, or to let them find their own way. Careful about not making things worse, I said. Charlotte's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned. It's Jennifer Martinez. She wants to meet with me. The head of R&D? Yeah. She says she has a proposition. Charlotte looked up. Should I meet with her? Do you want to? I don't know what I want anymore. She put her phone down. 3 weeks ago, I thought I wanted power, money, control. Now I just want to understand what happened. Why Mom did what she did. Why you let us have everything. Why it all fell apart. Those are good questions. But you're not going to answer them. Not yet. Why not? Because you're not asking the right question yet. What's the right question? I finished my coffee, considered how much to say. The right question isn't, why did this happen? It's, what am I going to do now? Charlotte was quiet for a long time. Outside, the rain intensified. I want to learn, she said finally. I want to actually understand the company, the industry, what Mom was doing, not so I can take over again. I know I'm not ready for that. Maybe I never will be. But I want to understand what she built, who she was. Then meet with Jennifer, listen to what she has to say. And Charlotte, actually work. Not the way you worked before, calling in sick and treating it like an obligation. Really work. Learn. Grow. Will that fix anything? It might fix you. The rest, we'll see. She left to meet Jennifer, and I sat alone with my empty coffee cup and my pocket full of secrets. My phone buzzed. Marcus. The interim CEO has been appointed. Robert Mendoza, former COO of Techdyne. Solid choice. Board announcement tomorrow. Another text. He'll want to meet with you. You still own 8% according to public records. He doesn't know about the trust structure yet. Nobody knew, except Patricia and me. The board thought I was a minor shareholder. The children thought they owned non-voting stock without realizing it was non-voting. The world thought I'd surrendered everything. Only I knew I controlled it all. The power sat on me, like weight. I could reveal it tomorrow. Take my seat at the head of the table, run Meridian myself or through proxies, show everyone that David Chen wasn't the defeated spouse, but the ultimate victor. Or I could wait, let Robert Mendoza stabilize the company, let the children work under professional management, let them learn without the pressure of ownership, let Catherine's plan unfold completely, before deciding whether to stick to her script or write my own ending. The rain stopped. Sun broke through clouds, turning the wet streets golden. I thought about Catherine's letter. About her giving me authority for once. About her trusting me to know what was right. But what was right? Justice? Mercy? Truth? Manipulation? All of them? None of them? I didn't know. So I did what I'd done for 23 years of marriage. I waited. I watched. I let the people around me make their moves while I figured out mine. The interim CEO would be announced tomorrow. The truth could wait one more day. Or one more month. Or forever. I'd decide when I was ready. When they were ready. When the moment was finally right to reveal what Catherine had really done and what I was going to do about it. 6 months later, I sat in another courtroom. Not for litigation this time, for something Catherine's legal team called a trust review hearing, a formality required by the trust structure she'd created. Judge Morrison presiding again, because apparently my family's legal drama was her specialty now. The children didn't know why they'd been summoned. The notice had been vague. Regarding the Catherine Chen Meridian Trust and final distribution of assets. They sat across the aisle again, but different this time. Alexandra wore a simple suit instead of designer armor. She'd been working under Robert Mendoza for 6 months. Quietly, diligently. No more dramatic pronouncements. No more ego-driven decisions. Just showing up early, staying late, learning. Jennifer Martinez had told me Alexandra asked better questions now, listened more than she spoke, actually read the technical documentation instead of skimming executive summaries. Brandon looked healthier, 3 months sober, attending meetings, working in a junior analyst position that actually matched his capabilities. He'd sold the Ferrari, moved to a smaller apartment, stopped pretending to be something he wasn't. Charlotte had surprised everyone most. She'd become Jennifer's assistant, learning R&D from the ground up. No more marketing fluff. She wanted to understand the actual technology. She called me twice a week now, just to talk, just to connect. They'd grown, not completely, not perfectly, but genuinely. The question was, had they grown enough? Marcus sat beside me, still not knowing everything. Patricia Morrison sat at the attorney's table, the architect of Catherine's elaborate plan, waiting to reveal its final act. Judge Morrison entered. We stood. This is a trust review hearing for the Catherine Chen Meridian Trust, she began. Miss Morrison, you called this hearing. Please proceed. Patricia stood, and I saw my children exchange confused glances. They recognized her name from Catherine's will, but didn't understand why she was here. Your Honor, I'm here to provide clarity on the actual structure of Mrs. Catherine Chen's estate, which has not been fully disclosed until now. Alexandra leaned forward. Brandon's face went pale. Charlotte looked at me, questioning. 6 months ago, Patricia continued, there was a settlement in which David Chen transferred what appeared to be controlling interest in Meridian Technologies to his children. Stock certificates were issued. Assets were transferred. Everyone believed the matter was closed. She pulled out documents. However, the stock transferred was Class B non-voting shares. The actual voting control, the real power over Meridian Technologies, was placed in an irrevocable trust with David Chen as trustee. The courtroom went silent, except for someone's sharp intake of breath. Furthermore, Patricia said, the trust included a provision that if family leadership resulted in a no-confidence vote within 12 months, all control would revert permanently to the trustee. That vote occurred. That reversion happened. David Chen has been the actual controller of Meridian Technologies for the past 6 months, though this fact was not publicly disclosed. Alexandra stood up. That's impossible. We own. You own valuable stock that generates dividends and can be sold, Patricia interrupted. You don't own control. You never did. Your mother ensured that. Brandon looked like he might be sick. Charlotte was crying silently. Your Honor, Patricia continued, we're here today because the trust requires a formal hearing to determine final distribution.
Mr. Chen must decide whether to retain permanent control, transfer it to professional management, or under specific conditions, transfer it to his children. Judge Morrison looked at me.
Mr. Chen, did you know about this structure when you signed the settlement 6 months ago?
No, Your Honor. I learned about it the day after the board's no-confidence vote. And you chose not to disclose it? I chose to wait, to see what my children would do when they thought they'd lost everything. The judge's expression was unreadable. And what did they do? They grew up. I stood, pulled out the folder I'd been carrying. 6 months of reports, employee evaluations, Robert Mendoza's assessments, documentation of changed behavior, improved performance, genuine effort. Alexandra has worked diligently under professional management, I said. She's learning operations, strategy, the technical foundations she lacked. She shows up. She listens. She's becoming competent. She did not competent. She learning operations. Alexandra was staring at me, tears streaming down her face. Brandon entered treatment for gambling addiction and alcohol dependency. He's sober. He's working in a position that matches his actual skills, rather than his imagined ones. He's honest now about his limitations. Brandon's face was buried in his hands. Charlotte discovered she has genuine aptitude for R&D. She's studying engineering part-time while working full-time. She's building real knowledge instead of coasting on her name. I looked at my children, all 3 crying now, all 3 finally understanding what their mother had done. Your Honor, Catherine's trust gives me 3 options. I've considered all of them carefully. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Option 1, keep permanent control. Run Meridian myself or through appointed managers. Let the children remain passive beneficiaries. I paused. I'm not choosing that option. I didn't want to run Catherine's company. I wanted to be their father. I'm not choosing that option. I wanted to be their father. Alexandra made a sound between a sob and a laugh. Option 2. Transfer control to an independent foundation or professional management structure, removing family involvement entirely. Another pause. I'm not choosing that option either. Because despite everything, this is still Catherine's legacy, and they're still her children, our children. I pulled out the final document. Option 3. Conditional transfer. The trust allows me to transfer voting control back to the children if they meet specific criteria, demonstrated competence, board approval, and trustee determination that they've learned from their failures. I looked at Alexandra, Brandon, Charlotte. You've met those criteria. Barely, imperfectly, but genuinely. Alexandra's breath caught. So I'm transferring voting control back to you. Not all at once. You'll gain increased voting rights over 5 years as you continue to demonstrate competence. But starting today, you'll have real power again. Limited, supervised, conditional, but real. Why? Brandon's voice was hoarse. After everything we did to you? Because your mother asked me to. Because she believed, hoped, that you could learn from failing, that you could become better than you were. I paused. And because you're my children, that still means something to me, even when it didn't mean anything to you. Charlotte ran across the aisle, threw her arms around me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Daddy. Alexandra approached more slowly, her composure finally shattered completely. You could have told us months ago. You could have humiliated us even more. Why didn't you? Because humiliation wasn't the point. Learning was. And you needed time to learn without the pressure of knowing you were being tested. Did we pass? She whispered. You're passing. It's not a final exam. It's ongoing work. But yes, you're passing. Brandon stood uncertainly. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve another chance. Probably not, I agreed. But your mother left specific instructions. She said you deserved the chance to become people who deserve it.
That's different. Judge Morrison cleared her throat. Mr. Chen, this is highly unusual. You're voluntarily returning power to the people who challenged your wife's will and forced a humiliating settlement? I'm honoring my wife's actual will, the one behind the will, the one that said our children were worth saving, even from themselves. She studied the documents Patricia had filed. The trust structure is legal. The conditions have been met. If you're certain about this decision, Mr. Chen, I'll approve the transfer. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. I'm certain. Then this court approves the conditional transfer of voting rights as outlined in the trust modification documents. The Catherine Chen Meridian Trust will continue to exist, with David Chen as trustee, overseeing a graduated transfer of control over 5 years. She looked at my children. You three just got the rarest thing in the world. A second chance you didn't earn. I hope you're wise enough to appreciate it. The gavel came down. It was done. We stood in the courthouse hallway afterward. Me, my children, the lawyers who'd helped orchestrate Catherine's elaborate plan. Your mother loved you, I told them. She just didn't know how to show it except through tests and challenges and impossible standards. This whole thing, the will, the settlement, the failure, the revelation, it was her trying to give you what she never gave herself, the freedom to fail and learn and grow. It was cruel, Alexandra said, but without anger, just observation. Yes, it was also love. She was complicated. Are you? Charlotte asked. Are you complicated too? Or did you really just forgive us? I thought about the question, about the 6 months I'd spent watching them suffer, grow, change, about the power I'd held and the choice I'd made. I'm complicated, I admitted. I watched you fail and felt satisfied. I watched you grow and felt proud. I held power over you and enjoyed it. And I gave that power back because I love you. All of it's true. All of it's complicated. Like marriage, Alexandra said softly. Yes. Like marriage. Like family. Like every relationship that matters. We walked out of the courthouse together, into September sunshine. 6 months ago, they'd inherited everything and lost it through incompetence. Today, they'd inherited something better. Understanding. Humility. A second chance. And me? I'd inherited something too. Not a company. Not wealth. I'd inherited the role Catherine had always meant for me, the parent who stayed, the one who taught through patience rather than tests, the one who loved them enough to let them fail and wise enough to help them rise. Coffee? I suggested. All three nodded. We went to the same neighborhood cafe where Charlotte and I had talked 6 months ago. We sat together, father and children, broken and rebuilding, complicated and real. And for the first time in years, maybe in forever, we felt like a family. Not Catherine's family, not the one built on her absence and their resentment. A different family, smaller, damaged, honest, but ours. Finally, impossibly, ours.